the least. Like people living with disabilities and paratransit should not be a stepping stone to be a full driver. They should be even the most experienced and compensated because they are dealing with people with special needs, and their safety is so critically important. So I publicly come out and had a hearing and made my voice known. And I think I've answered all the questions that are here. If there's any questions on the floor for me. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Next, we have the candidate for Amherst council member, Michael Zucala. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Hello, everyone. The first thing I'll let you know is my campaign manager would say, I've broken a rule because I've diminished my authority because I'm not wearing a jacket. It's a little too warm in here, so I ask you to forgive me. As I said, my name is Mike Zucala. I am an Amherst board member. I was elected in 2000. Told me I lost. However, after 1,100 absentee ballots were counted, I won by 49, not 490, not 4,900, by 49. Or a better way to think of it is everyone in this room had voted for me in the town of Amherst, and you changed your mind, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you right now. So anyone who will tell you that your vote doesn't matter or your vote doesn't count, they're wrong. And I'm here to tell you it does. Since I've been elected, I've made an issue of housing in Amherst. Housing is very expensive, not just in Amherst, but throughout Western Europe. All of you know that. I'm working to increase the amount of housing in Amherst and to try and decrease its price. One of the big issues right now is the Boulevard Mall. Fortunately, the town of Amherst, what we've been able to do is take the Boulevard Mall and it will now be repurposed. Right now, if you've been through the Boulevard Mall lately, you'll say, well, let's just say it's not getting its maximum use. What will happen is that property will be repurposed. It will be turned into first floor retail, and then a series of towers, which will include property that will be either condos or apartments that will be mid to lower level prices. Certainly not low income housing, but it will free up housing for other people.
And actually, how much of that is going to be wheelchair accessible housing? Because if you need a house, the wait list is an apartment 6 months, a year, 2 years. If you need wheelchair accessible housing, the wait list is 10 years, 20 years.
Right now, because we're still getting proposals from developers and no proposal has been accepted, I don't know, but I'll tell you what I can tell you. I will ask that question the next time someone makes a pitch.
Good.
I've also made it clear that one of the great things in Amherst is the amenities that make our communities great. Amherst Central Park is going to become a reality. It used to be the old Westwood Golf Course. In April, you can see it at the end when the snow disappears. Shovels will hit the ground and it will become a park, not just for this year, but for your kids, their grandkids, and their grandkids. It will be accessible. It will have music fair in it, which will have an accessible building. It will encourage the arts. It's a great opportunity to once again increase the amenities in Amherst and make Amherst a livable, fun, exciting community. Continue to capitalize on it. Am I out of time? No. Oh, no. Okay. And I thought I heard somebody say it. And then, of course, the other thing I'm very proud of is even during COVID, even during an economic downturn, we managed to hold the line on property taxes because I understand that not everybody who lives in Amherst is wealthy. Not everybody in Amherst can take the shock of a property tax. We're working to do that, and yet we've managed to keep services going. Police, fire, emergency services, street plowing, all of that, street lights, all of that continued to function even during COVID, even during an economic downturn, because you pay for and expect and demand good services. And it's our responsibility as elected officials to provide them to you. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is that we've held the line on property taxes. Because Amherst has a reputation for being an affluent community. Make no mistake about it. Drive up and down streets. You go to certain parts of Buffalo, you're not going to see a Lotus. You're not going to see a Ferrari, but you will see them in Amherst. But I don't want, and I don't think anyone in this room wants to see Amherst become an island of affluence in a sea of poverty. That benefits no one. And as a result, holding the line helps us move that forward. Amherst needs a diverse, and I don't just mean diverse in terms of ethnic, but in diversity in terms of economic. Amherst needs a diverse economic community. And I'm doing the very best I can to help that move forward. Not just with housing, but also with tax rates. How much time do I have?
You have time.
What?
Only another 15 minutes.
We're good.
We're good, okay.
Yeah.
I have exhausted my pre-planned remarks.
Okay.
Does anyone have a question? Anyone want to ask me? I'll just do a short bio then. As I said, my name is Mike Zuccalla. I am a lifelong Western New York resident, if you define Western New York broadly. I'm originally from Chautauqua County. I've lived in Amherst since 2008. I actually started working in government in 1988 under then Mayor Griffin and then City Comptroller Robert Whalen. Yes, the gray hair is here for a reason. I did turn 60. I've spent my life working in government, but this is my second time running for office. My first time, as I said, I ran in 2019.
Any questions?
Well, is there any effort on your part to establish like more nonprofits in your area? One of the problems I always see is where it seems like most services that are run by the government first funnel through profit agencies. So that's usually where it's kind of hard to lessen costs if one of the key issues is always making a profit on what you're doing. So that's just one of the things I'm seeing of where there's easy solutions for certain things of where if you're cutting out the profit aspect for certain things, then things could be more affordable, like housing and stuff like that.
I personally, I think you'd have to be a little more specific to ask me what it is we might be going to a not-for-profit for. My particular areas seem to be more finance because of my accounting and computer science background. As a matter of fact, later tonight I have a meeting of the terribly named AgFab, the Amherst Government Financial Advisory Board. It's committees like that that help get citizen influence over taxes and what we spend our money on, and I'm proud of that. But I would just say I can't be everywhere. I don't know what specific not-for-profit committees you'd like us to create. Can you give me an idea?
Well, for me, this is where our agency does basically peer support and helps people with disabilities for advocacy in the neighborhoods. But if there's, this is what I'm saying, I haven't heard of any nonprofits that like do housing, where usually most of it's still for-profit housing, that's what I'm saying, where it seems to be, if you have to make 50% profit, it's going to increase the rent, but that's what I'm saying, where I was just asking you if there's anything that's, like you've heard of or anything that you're striving to work towards that, if you've seen it as an issue or not.
I'm doing what I can to see to it that there's more housing built, especially more low entry level to mid-level housing, because that should free up other housing. But I can tell you from meetings I've had with developers, the problem I have is what you consider to be an entry level house and what a developer considers to be an entry level house are two very different numbers. I had a breakfast at Tim Hortons with a prominent developer in Western New York whose name I should use but won't. And well, because he pulled up in a car that's worth more than my house. Right. And during that coffee, he said, "You know what, Mike, I'm making a commitment. I'm going to build more entry-level housing." And I said, "Fabulous, thank you. That's my job as an elected official. We try and negotiate those deals," and I succeeded. And then on the way out, I thought to ask the question, what do you consider an entry-level house? By the way, what do you think you consider an entry-level house to start?
100,000.
$400,000 he considers an entry-level house. Honestly, I thought my number was like 150, 200. No, that's the disconnect. There needs to be more of a bridge built between the for-profit builders and the people who put demands on housing. When I talked with this person, I said, "Could you reconsider that?" And his answer was, This is capitalism. I won't make money if I try and sell a house at less than $400,000. Okay, I am not gonna go through his books, I'm gonna take him at his word, but you're right, we need to figure out a way to bridge that, because $400,000, I don't think anyone in this is at an entry level house. I actually consider it.
Difference between an apartment or something somebody else owns
Yes.
and a house you can own yourself.
Yes.
Are you doing anything to combat the big businesses and industries that are buying up all the houses in the neighborhood to either A, knock them down and turn them into another big apartment building, or B, just buy them up and rent them out, even as individual houses? Because those houses will never go on the market again for me to buy or him to buy or him to buy. Because once the big for-profit corporations own them, they're never going to be owned by another human being.
I actually do agree with that. And one of the things that we've dealt with in the town is we've had problems with absentee landlords, and we've passed legislation where you can't be, and I wouldn't say you can't be completely an absentee landlord, but you have to file paperwork so we know how to get a hold of you. Because the other problem we had is you're an absentee landlord and you don't take care of your property, or you rent to people who don't behave themselves. So yes, that's one of the things we've done. When I say housing, when the developers I've met with are the ones who want to put up housing, but it wouldn't always be, it wouldn't also be standalone houses. It's condominiums, it's apartments, as I said.
It's always condominiums and apartments. You get more bang for your buck, you get
Yes.
more square feet for your dollar.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the houses that already exist, that are being purchased by major corporations who are either renting them to individuals who will never own a house because they're renting it from a big corporation and it's no longer available for purchase, or who are going to knock them down and make skyscrapers or whatever.
I can't.
Individual human ownership as
I
opposed
can't
to.
go backwards and tell someone that they can't own a piece of their property, but I can go forwards and encourage more reasonably priced properties to be built. But you're right, that is something I've heard before, is that corporations are buying houses and they're becoming essentially permanent landlords. Well, permanent landlords forever. And you're right, that's a long-term problem.
Well, I guess then the question would be is there being any emphasis put on skipping basically the big construction people and basically providing the money to people through some sort of program where they would get the money themselves to build their own individual housing if they meet certain requirements? Because if the problem is you have to get the rich middle person to basically do everything, and then they're basically deciding prices, they get to decide the prices, where if there's an actual emphasis to get it back where people maybe, are getting money to have their own homes built, because that's where the other part becomes of where when you get these basically big corporations that take over all the construction of homes, there's no individual homes built by just an individual unless they're very wealthy anymore. The costs will be, it's out of the someone who's making $40,000 a year is never going to be able to afford to actually have their own home built because the prices are just outrageous to have a home built.
At this time, you're correct. I'm sorry. I don't know if I actually answered the question.
What I'm saying is there any like what I was saying, Lori, an emphasis to start where it doesn't start with a corporation that's just going to make a whole bunch of housing and then try to sell off the housing. It's where the money's allowed to like a family or some through a program or something where they've established, whatever it is they have to do so the government gets them the money instead of giving it to this third party that's going to make the house. So where now the person, they get the money and get to dictate how the house goes, where the third person that the government usually gives the money to is dictating how things go.
That's an interesting idea. At this moment, I can tell you, I'm not aware of any such program like that in Please.
So what is your number for rent? Like when you built those new housing requirements or anything like that, what is your number or your range of the rent? Because if the rent is 800 and they're gonna go up in a year 15% to 9%, some people can't afford that.
I agree, many people can't afford that. When I've been speaking with developers, I have not been speaking with developers about rent. I've been speaking with developers about people purchasing a piece of property because I love the idea of home ownership. Home ownership is a vehicle, not just from the lower to the middle class to the upper class. So I've been encouraging that. So I've been talking with those folks about buying condominiums, buying apartments, buying houses. And as I said, that's where they throw out the number $400,000. I throw out the number, what can we do for 150? What can you do for 175? What can you do for 200? Because I think that's much more reasonable. I haven't actually been looking at, so to summarize, I understand what you're saying from rent. I'm also trying to plan a couple moves out to, I want to see home ownership. So I've been more aiming in that direction.
Okay.
Where do you have a website where all the plans that you want to move forward, like the Boulevard Mall and stuff?
The town has a website. My campaign website is California House.
Okay, and then do you think these will be there, maybe?
I will put them on. I've been notorious for being slow on updating my website. I confess that. The problem is I pay my webmaster and he charges me more than he should. But I love him because he's gonna watch this.
Early.
Yeah, I know this isn't the sort of thing that one would normally think of for a town with a reputation of Amherst, but a few weeks ago, I caught part of a news story about somebody that was producing starter homes, brand new, kind of prefab, and the entire house is about the size of a large bedroom, but yet it's got the A-frame roof and shingles and everything like that. Have you heard of anything of that?
I haven't heard very much of those things. Some people refer to them as tiny homes, but they're actually not. These are actually bigger than that. Tiny homes are really the size of a trailer. But yes, I understand and I've heard that. There are code issues with that. There's also location issues with that. And deep down inside, that doesn't really address what I was hoping to address, which is back where we are earlier. I want to see people buy, even if it's a smaller home, buy a smaller home, because that's a vehicle to move from, let's say, the lower to the middle to the upper class. It helps you build equity, it helps you move upward. So although I'm not against that, that's not really what I was hoping to do. I would like to solve as many problems as possible through the housing process, and moving people in and up is one of them. That's not good. It's not a bad idea, but it's not my first choice.
Building credit with buy a house, right? You may not be building credit. You
Right.
know, somebody else's credit.
With kind of shifting gears, I know that NFT Metro Rail is a big topic in the community, and especially with it being expanded into Amherst. What are you going to do to facilitate the motion with that project and continue the discussion on it?
The NFTA ultimately makes a decision, and I, as a town board member, don't get a vote in that. But I can also say I've had the opportunity to talk with folks at the state level, so folks at the county level. I understand you're going to hear the county executive and Chrissy can see you later today. But sadly, I'm not convinced that project's going to be built. And here's the simple reason why. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, right at a time where if you open up this week's Buffalo News, it says that New York State is predicting a 36 billion, that's billion with a B, 1,000 millions of dollars deficit next year. And actually, they're predicting deficits not just next year, but the next 3 years. With that, and the fact that New York State's already been kind enough to provide us money for the stadium, I find it unlikely that they will continue to provide us funds for this. And I think we should be prepared for the idea that we would need to solve our public transportation issues in another way.
Thank you very much for.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
We're waiting on our next candidate, so as soon as they arrive, we'll begin.
Now, Housing, oh. Council member or elder.
Yeah.
Back on, it'll be about. I don't know. It's not small. Where they make it clear. They raise the price range. Nothing is mentioned.
Yeah, everything is gonna be. I got it. This one is.
Watching game.
This is a foil. I could say, sort of, this past week, one of the worst weeks that I can
Depending on where the house.
Unprepared with the community season these days because
Because
with
you did it
the
on the back.
sugar,
Bundle side.
we got that first players, we get too many. I don't know. I just we have to have all you have it was
That's what happens with most things that were what's probably in the problem is you're getting a lot of people in church. And that's what I said was, it's just so hard when I watch it, it's go like, it's just, I don't know how to get that. The problem was, they don't have specific. Where. Somehow we're. But then all of a sudden we're playing. And one play. One game, you're basically all over, and then if you watch, really, it's like that. Their guys are basically like. What is going on? Yeah. But we've got to do this is what works out. I've never seen it feel comfortable with not the lead, all right? You got to go see he's running games right now. So that Kevin McCollum were out of that. That's where the better person. So Kevin, you'll spend if you didn't have leads. I sure. Because you do. I was there. I'm not looking to you're not looking where I did that. So many things where resolution. What they got. Right. It's the thing. I think that people that never experienced.
Well, I'll say this, okay, they gotta go along with I'm going to do food thing. West Florida the year. That's one of the biggest things. Yeah. So, like, some of these bold decisions, it's gonna come out. of nowhere. The only thing is that, going up the
Patience, our next candidate is supposed to be here in about 5 minutes.
We did, one of the things that is.
Hello.
Okay, we have our next candidate. The candidate for the Ellicott Council member is Leah Halton Pope, and she is on our Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't.
Hello.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Hi, my name is Leah Holt. I don't know what the format is. So I didn't, should I just introduce myself or is there?
You can stump for a minute and then take questions. So do your standard
Great.
opening.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Leah Halton Pope. I am currently Senior Advisor to Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes. So I've been to West New York Independent Living a few times on behalf of the Majority Leader and have had the privilege of working with you all. Earlier this year, the Ellicott District seat, as you all know, was vacated by Council President Darius Pridgeon. And after a lot of deep thinking and strong consideration, I decided to dip my foot into new waters and run to represent the constituency of the Ellicott District in the Buffalo Common Council, and was blessed and grateful, and I don't take anything for granted, to have won a four-way primary. There were three gentlemen and me. For the last 10 years, I've served as Senior Advisor and Deputy Chief of Staff to the Majority Leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, where I've written some significant pieces of legislation that have directly impacted the Ellicott District, the city of Buffalo, and the state of New York as a whole. In addition to that, I've also worked with making sure that there was funding available for communities of interest in our district. And I'm hoping to be able to take my experience in those relationships that I've built over the past 20 odd years on the federal, state, and hopefully now on the city level to bring a new voice and a fresh perspective to the Ellicott District. As you already know, the district itself is one of the largest. This has been recently redistricted, so surface area wise, it's the largest district. It is also the most diverse district from everyone from every different socioeconomic background and education level, ability. We have new Buffalonians, new Americans, and now a lot of new Ellicott residents. And I strongly believe whether we're on the west side of Main Street or you're on the east side of Main Street, people who our homeowners want to be able to stay in their homes, to make sure that, so working to make sure that property taxes don't go too high. If you're renters, we don't want you to be rented out of your communities. And so working with those individuals to make sure that there's some affordable housing opportunities. Also stabilizing our neighborhoods by investing in our streets, our sidewalks, and our curbs. And these are the same no matter what side of the district you live on or what side of Main Street you're on, it's still a concern. It's just how we get there. And also supporting our small businesses. These are the top three issues that I've heard knocking doors, top three issues that I've heard just speaking to people out in the community throughout my tenure working with the leader, but also in this campaign cycle. And so I'm hoping that collectively we can create a stronger and more unified district. There hasn't been a woman in the council in over 10 years, the Ellicott District in about 20 years. The last person was Comptroller Barbara Miller-Williams. And I just think it's important to have unique perspectives on the council. I don't think you should vote for somebody because of their gender or ethnicity, but I do think experience matters. I do think relationships matter. Whatever is going to truly benefit all of the constituents is what matters to me. There's no personal gain in this. I don't think you get into public service because people want to get rich. I mean, anybody who thinks that probably doesn't have a real heart for people. But my desire is to make sure that there's equity across the board, be it in education, in healthcare, in access to quality and affordable quality jobs and affordable living, and housing, and be a voice that works with the community as a whole. And that's some long and short of who I am and what I'm running for.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Peaches Johnson, and I'd like to, did we lose her?
Go ahead.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay, I'm good. Hi, again, I'm Peaches Johnson, and I'd like to ask, what is your, vision support of the various mental health and homelessness services in the Ellicott District in the face of an increased experiencing homelessness and pushback from the residents, homeowners in the Ellicott area?
So oddly enough, in our office, because especially with new migrants coming into our community, I raised the question and requested that we do a roundtable, which we just recently did, and I moderated it. And it was with, in conjunction with every single, well, 90% of the agencies that provide services in and around the entire city of Buffalo. Because there is this serious problem with housing insecurity, and mental health is part of it, but it's also a problem of not having access to affordable housing or people on the benefits cliff. And so the first thing I wanted to do, and it's odd that you would ask that question, maybe fortuitous that you did. The first thing we wanted to do is to kind of find out what services are being provided, who are the individuals that you're providing. Is there some overlap? Like, I want to know what the real numbers look like. And it did show me that one of the largest numbers of groups of individuals who are underserved happens to be youth, which I was not aware of this in the LGBTQ plus community. And because definitions aren't consistent on the federal, the state, and the county levels, getting services for those individuals is harder. I also believe there has to be a cultural competency. And I do believe those who are housing insecure do have a certain culture. And when you get to those NIMBY, those not in my backyard types of individuals, explaining the culture is probably where you find the most support. I also think it's important that those agencies who provide services to those housing insecure individuals communicate effectively with the communities that they're in. And I think that that's where there's been working together, one, to figure out what what resources do you still need to be successful, one. Two, how do we make sure that we're good neighbors to one another? In particular, there's one organization that serves the population, but they don't have enough staff to manage. And so what was happening is some neighbors, and this is a personal experience, my goddaughter went to go check on her mom's house, as she does every night. And there was a gentleman from the facility literally on her mother's porch, and he would not leave, as if he owned it. That's because there wasn't enough staff to help at that facility. And I think we have to figure out how to address that. But she was put in a position where she didn't want to get into a combative situation, but this is private property that a person was squatting on, and he would not leave without somebody coming to help and intervene. So I think that there's, multiple things that happen, but I think if we work together in government, helping to provide the necessary resources for those agencies would be helpful. And then also building stronger relationships within the communities where the services are provided is critical.
If I may, I'd like to come behind you and say, for me, for Peaches Johnson, I'm 61 years old. I'm an African American here in Western New York. originally from the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And for me, don't take this wrong. For me, I'm going to speak for our people. We are tired. Like Stevie Wonder said in one of his records, you haven't done nothing, do up, and we are tired of hearing speeches. Now, I'm not coming at you, but
You're tired of hearing what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. You're tired of hearing what?
Okay, I can speak at 61 years old. You know what I mean? All I've ever heard, and I'm not attacking you, I'm just in general, we are tired of hearing speeches. Because guess what? Here in the Buffalo, Western New York area, people die every night. Fire. I came to this area October of '68, and I cannot tell you how many of your people here on this side of the Tappan Zee in Buffalo, New York, have been gunned down. We gunned down each other like nothing. The spirit of pain is still alive in the land. I need to know how can I incentivize my community. I have proposed at another event, the Great Revival. And I'm not talking about getting out here preaching God and everything. Listen, if you need help, this is right now help. If you're homeless right now, we got a place to take you right now. We ain't got to wait till this one sign legislation, this one comes from Israel, the president, and all of this. We can help you right now. We need right now help, miss. Right now.
I don't disagree, Ms. Johnson. The only problem is with a high number of homeless individuals, some of these agencies don't have enough beds. Some are not authorized to have beds. And so working with the county and the state, because the county provides social services, so we have to work together, meaning government agencies, but nobody's asked these questions. I didn't know until 2 weeks ago that the definitions for homelessness were different, because a person sleeping on somebody's couch who is homeless, they don't count unless they're literally on the street at least one night. That's ridiculous to me.
I can understand where you're coming from, and I wish you Godspeed, but until we can get the place, like Brother Reagan said, government is the problem. Government is bloated. Government.
Okay, you're not wrong.
I'm sorry, but let me purge, because I need to purge right about now, because I'm full. Okay. We need to get to the place, get government out of the way. Go back to the old-fashioned way. Go down to Miss Clara and get some sugar. Go down there and sit so. I got a bear for you right now. Everybody's not gonna be able to wait till tomorrow until this one get in office. That one we're gonna lose a lot more before we get this cord untangled. So I need to know. I need to know what is right now here. People are dying right now. Now we can't wait for the president to come back from yonder, from Israel. Because tonight, somebody will be at that bus station. Tonight, up under the library. So we can go back and forth with what type of homeless is good for information. But what is right now? Can you give me a syndicated radio show where I can get on there and start addressing our people? Because people are tired of preaching, people are tired of hearing this, that, and the other. They need right now help.
Yes, ma'am.
Where I can get right now help. We need it now.
Thank you so much. Anybody else have a question? Yes?
Hi, my name is Annie. I had a question, with you being a candidate, what will you be doing about the rent increases and these stores selling illegal products and cleaning out the supermarkets and tripling the prices for the people in the community?
Were you able to hear that question?
I think so. It was one was about cleaning out supermarkets with high price, and then also about rent increases.
Yeah, they're raising the rent like we are New York City, and this is the city of Buffalo, where a lot of people here are on fixed income. It's part of the reason why there's so much homelessness now.
Right, which is what I just said. I don't disagree with you at all. And so part of in my current role and what I do, I've recently met with a lot of new builders, developers, et cetera, to figure out how do we incentivize tenants by and frankly, those who are creating new spaces to not increase rents to exorbitant rates. And so I think that's where relationships are really important and building those with those communities. I think if Mrs. Jones has been living in her apartment for 20 years and has gotten nothing out of it, she pays her rent on time. She makes sure she takes care of not just her property, because some spaces are outside, you know, but takes care of the surrounding areas, is a good neighbor to people. There should be something that comes back to Mrs. Jones. And so one of the things I'd like to focus on is making sure that there is the ability to get some equity out of that rent. Maybe that's a forced savings, which if your rent is $800, maybe you can give $850 and that 50 goes into a savings account that's interest bearing. And after a certain amount of time, those resources coupled with an investment from the developer can be for tuition or for books for your child or grandchild, et cetera. Or if that property were to become a condo or a co-op, it allows for ownership. As it relates to current rates, I know on the state level, this is something that is being examined. And on the city level, let me just be clear, the difference between me and others, I'm not good at just telling you what you want to hear to make you feel good. I'm going to tell you the truth. So I could say, oh, I'm going to work and it's going to be knocked down. That's not fair or honest for me to say to you, because I realize you got to work with partners in other forms of government in order to make a law to keep rents at a reasonable level. And so that's what I intend to do. And we've already been working on some of those issues. I have personally, in speaking to people who have rental properties in the city of Buffalo, in the Ellicott district in particular, especially some of those larger developers, to figure out what can we do to make sure that there's some equity built in and that you're not charging people exorbitant rents where they can no longer live in the communities that they want to live in anymore. We don't want to have another situation of Elmwood Heights where you're in deplorable conditions, but people are paying like $600 a month to live there. The doors don't lock. There were people sleeping in the hallways. And so certain people, once they came in, they didn't go back out after dark because it was dangerous for them. I don't want that to happen again. So now it's about stabilizing our communities by working with those individuals to keep rents low. It gets a little trickier with private landlords. I think their concern is that they're being put in the same mix as a developer. And I think we have to identify that, you know, like my mom owns a 2-family home, that other rental property is her income. People still have to pay rent. I think we have an issue of, not I think, I know there's a huge percentage of people who haven't paid rent at all. But that doesn't mean that everybody should be punished for that. And so I'd like to work with the community, the tenants in these organizations, one, to help us get organized, and then two, to address the issue and to figure out what's the best solution for everybody. There's a contract, let's figure out what it is. We signed it at the beginning of the lease, so you should honor it. You should not be sending up the rent 600%, 300%, 100%.
Well, thank you very much. In the interest of time, we have our next candidate, and I'd like to thank Ms. Pope, Colton Pope, for her participation.
Thank you. I appreciate you all, I really do.
Next, we have the candidate for county executive, and our current county executive, Mark Fulkerson.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's good to be here once again at the Western New York Independent Living Center to talk about the issues of county government, as well as how they have an impact on people's lives. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars. I've had the privilege to serve as the county executive. This is my 3rd term right now. I'm running for a 4th term and one more term, only one more term. Continue the work that we've done. Oh, thank you. Or somebody say, oh. But one more term to finish the work that we've done to create the best Erie County possible for each and every one of the individuals in our community. Just to harken back to when I ran for county executive, we were coming off of the throes still of a depressed era in our community, where from the mid 1980s through basically the mid 2000s and the end of the 2000s, we were seeing this economic malaise that was affecting our community repeatedly, with economic downturns and issues associated with the best days of Buffalo and Erie County were in our rearview mirror. And I disagree. I was elected to be the county controller to clean up the red-green fiscal crisis mess, and I did that. And then in 2011, I ran to be the county executive to be a leader for all. That was a time in which our county executive didn't understand that the county executive, like all elected officials, works for the people of the community. The people of the community, the people of the county are the bosses of the county executive. You need to provide the services as effectively and efficiently as can, but not do it in a manner where you're actually declining services, which is what unfortunately was happening with the prior county executive. So if you think about where we were at that point to where we are today and how we've grown as a community, not only as a population, but we've become a better, stronger community, I believe. We've had an economy that was in a doldrums, and now we have one of the strongest economies we've ever seen. We actually need more people in our community to fill the jobs that exist. There are thousands of jobs available. We just don't have enough people to fill them all. We've addressed issues to ensure that there's a more equitable community, both in just general economic matters, but in healthcare through our Live Well Erie campaign, as well as the Office of Health Equity. And on issues associated with the disability community, I think we've been the strongest administration to address those issues, not only by having a strong advocate for the disability community in the Office of People with Disabilities, but addressing the needs of the community, including just recently signing into law a new law which provides and requires on all county contracts that we look to assist a service veteran disabled businesses and giving them a preference on contracts. We are continuing to work to ensure we're the greatest community that we can be. As I said, we used to think the best days of Erie County and Buffalo were in our rearview mirror. I disagree. And what we've been able to do over the last few years proves it, even though we've had one of the most tumultuous times in the history of our community. During my term, this most recent term, I just got elected at the end of 2019, and I figured that would be my last term as county executive. But I didn't understand or know at that point that we would be going through 2+ years of COVID and the impact that had on the greater community. Once we finally kind of got out of that in early 2022, then we had the horrific mass shooting on the east side and the impact that had to ensure that we could provide food for those who didn't have it, mental health services to those who needed it. And we started coming through that, and we had the terrible November snowstorm and the horrific blizzard. So this last few years have not been fun for any of us, I think. But I'm running for one more term to finish the work, to complete the work I thought I was going to be able to do this term, but we had to push aside because of the issues that were much more important. And now that we've gotten to a point where we can focus on those general issues again, I'm running for one more term to serve as your county executive, to be the individual who can be there for you in county government, addressing the issues that are needed of all communities, but especially those people with disabilities, so that we ensure that everyone does live their best life possible. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to attend your forum. I've always attended your forums dating back to when I ran for county controller. I've listened to the advocates from the disability community. We try to work together to solve problems in the community. You're not always going to agree on every issue. That's okay, as long as you can do it in a civil manner. But I certainly appreciated the time I've had to not only present before you, but also work with members of the community to create a better community for all. With that, I'll open up to any questions.
I got a tough one, Mark, sorry. So we're staring down what feels like maybe an early winter, cold blue season starting. And, you know, I wonder if you would speak about, like, this is a community that has seen prisons become the asylums of the past, where we are answering mental health concerns by putting people in jail. With the $800 million prison expansion, what kind of money?
Well, there is no prison expansion.
No prison expansion.
There's a study that's looking at what it might cost, but any number out there is just wrong.
It's just, okay,
So we haven't even come close to that point yet.
thank God. But what funding, what resources will be put towards preventative care? There's a shelter shortage. You know, at least like alternative diversionary programs. And then, yeah.
Well, with regards to the diversion and the alternatives, first off, the county's worked with our mental health office and various police departments to set up crisis intervention teams so that when the situation arises, you have individuals who arrive on site who are trained to address mental health issues. So it's just not a police officer who's trained for what potentially could be a violent situation, but a situation with members of the crisis intervention team to ensure that the individuals get the services they need immediately, not getting them arrested and then find out afterwards that they just were dealing with a mental health concern. On the alternative, we actually have a pilot program that's been working, and part of the problem is it requires the individual who calls into the 911. It's a 911 diversionary system. You call 911 and you really need mental health services rather than a police officer come. The idea is you would divert the call to one of the mental health providers, but it requires the individual who's calling to agree to that. And what we found is in the initial pilot program, when they say, do you want a police officer or would you prefer that a mental health counselor be sent? Almost 100%, I think there's only one or two occasions, the individuals have not requested the mental health. They've said, I want a police officer. That's something we have to work on because we cannot just automatically send mental health professional if the individual says, no, I want a police officer. And it's a problem because we have some individuals who, because of mental health concerns, themselves are calling all the time. They're frequent callers. And the issue is the police and others know that this is a mental health concern, but they can't automatically send the mental health assistance. So that is a legitimate problem that we put the pilot in place to see what happened. And now it's not going necessarily in the direction that we thought it would. So the issue is, what can you do? If somebody calls 911, 911 operators immediately transfer it to a police department or a fire department, depending on what the call is. If it's a heart attack, it goes to the fire department or whomever it is that may be appropriate for that community. If it's anything else, it generally will go to police. So we created with the diversion program, and it has not lived up to the expectations that we thought. Sometimes some of these programs that we put in place do not rise to what we thought they were going to be able to do. With regards to the jail, your first portion of it, the county has an RFP out investigating the possibility of building a new jail. We don't know anywhere what it would be, and it's not been approved yet. We have two facilities that are both too large and one that's exceptionally old that is not suitable for housing individuals. I do agree with you. Unfortunately, prisons have become the location for most individuals who are dealing with mental health concerns. They need to be in a mental health facility, but once we got rid of the institutionalization of individuals, in a crisis situation, sometimes individuals act in a way that you would hope they wouldn't. They commit crimes, and there's nowhere else to put them. So I don't think our jails should be the locations for individuals who are who really need mental health assistance. But unfortunately, when someone commits a crime, they also have to pay for their crime. So how do you address that? You would hope that the facilities are properly built to ensure that if an individual does commit a crime and ends up in the holding center waiting adjudication or is convicted and is technically in the correctional facility, that the services are available there to ensure they never set foot in there again. And while the correctional facility has some of that, the holding center really doesn't. The holding center was built in the 1930s, and there's been additions to it, but there are some parts of it that would never be allowed today except for a grandfather clause, as they like to say, that allows Erie County to utilize it. So we are looking at a new facility because both facilities are not at, there's more beds available at both facilities, and neither of them is really what you would consider a modern jail facility. So we are looking at it. It has been almost 50 years, 40 years, since the last major renovation was done at the holding center. At the correctional facility, it's much newer than the holding center, but it still is a facility that's really kind of outdated for today's correctional purposes. So we do need to look at it, but it has not been agreed to at this point.
Is a county shelter, is that something that's possible? I mean, the increase in homelessness.
There is an increase in homelessness, but we don't actually have a homeless problem like most other communities. We have a housing problem. We do not have a habitual homeless issue like you see tent cities in other communities. I was at a conference at Austin about a month ago, and there's tents everywhere, under overpasses, tent cities here. San Diego, one of the greatest cities in the United States, the most wealthy too, but it's not uncommon to see tent cities all over the place along the interstates. Our problem isn't is the homelessness to the same level. It's not having enough locations for the actual housing needs of our community today.
We also talk about bigger cities. So this is a smaller city.
Well, we've actually done analysis that shows, let me just turn this down, but we have done analysis that on reasonably similar sized cities, we are no longer near the other homeless populations that they have. So our problem is we do have homeless. I'm not going to deny that.
1,400 people who are homeless,
But those are perpetually homeless. That's a rotating number.
Sure.
So unlike other communities where it wouldn't be surprising for Erie County with 1 million people to have 1,400 people who are chronically homeless. The county works with the Homeless Association of Western New York to always look at these numbers. So the issue is, yeah, there's 1,400 homeless, but the vast majority of those are actually temporary, very temporary, till we can get them into more permanent housing. The issue is, how do you address it when we're having increased housing rates and it's making it difficult to find permanent housing for those individuals? And that's a problem that all parts of the United States are dealing, but we're really seeing it for the first time because the housing costs are much higher now than they were 10 years ago, nevertheless 20 years ago. Erie County used to be able to put people in all kinds of apartments in the city of Buffalo for temporary purposes until we could find them permanent housing. We can't find that anymore. So we are putting people in hotels.
Is it a plan and action for this?
Well, we don't think it's appropriate to build like a big shelter. First off, it'd be very expensive.
I don't think it's appropriate to build a big shelter. So,
but
I think honest people would think the same.
Well, can you explain the reasoning behind that? Because it's like right now our warming centers are overwhelmed because those are the only spaces that aren't choosy with who enters for shelter, right?
Well, the problem is, I'll give you an example. There's a very well-known institution at downtown that will not work with the county or the state and allow us to place people in there, and then we pay for it. I think City Mission.
I kind of City Mission.
City Mission will not work with us because they will not follow the guidelines of New York State. So there's always, like, we would love to be able to place people there, but they won't do it because they don't like the idea that they have to follow the state guidelines on provision of services. So we end up having sometimes temporary locations that are available, but we can't put them there because they don't follow our guidelines with regards to temporary location of individuals. So that's been a problem for now. They built brand new facility down there, can hold more people, but they won't accept the guidelines that are in place from state that the county has to follow. So we can't place them there. So we're constantly looking for other locations, including like Saving Grace Ministries and trying to increase the number of places that are available. So what we've been doing, unfortunately, for a lot of the homeless is we've been placing them in hotels, and we've had to place them in hotels that we've never used before. It's costing us more money than we'd like to. But building a shelter, how big a shelter will we need? 50, 500? It varies. There are times in the summer where a homeless population is very small. Our homeless population actually in the winter can grow and then decline. It's actually, we have less of a problem with homeless sometimes in the winter because people will find a location to stay. In the summer, it goes wild swings where it can be really high and then can be really low. There's no perfect answer to it.
They're very smart. They are very intelligent people. They know where to go. So they'll say they can create their own community.
And then there's also, I'll say this, there's also the issue with individuals who refuse to come indoors.
No doubt.
We have that problem. And the only death that I'm really aware of prior to the December blizzard of a homeless individual in bad weather was the gentleman in Amherst who had an opportunity to stay in a location of warmth. The rural outreach center used to handle that area, and he refused to come indoors.
Right.
So, I mean, there are times in which there are things that are just very difficult and we can't control. Go to you and then I'll get you in.
I'm disabled.
and I got mental issues, but I'm homeless because I lost my husband and lack of this income. That's a good reason I'm homeless. But what I encountered going to DSS for help, that it just doesn't line up as to what they expect us and what the shelter expects us. I was told from a supervisor, what goes on here stays here. I signed a contract with them that I'm getting 3 balanced meals a day when I'm only getting 2 that is burnt, not sufficient adequately with nutrients. Found a bathroom with no soap. Got hollered at for using too much toilet paper. Then DSS counts my Social Security $45 again for my allowance to keep when the bus pass at half off is $37.50. Then I'm supposed to buy laundry soap too, but they'll do the laundry. Where does it equal out? It doesn't. I had a chance
I can't speak about your particular situation. I can only talk about the general.
of DSS and
we follow, we have.
It's true, the per diem for shelters is a disincentive for many to go through the traditional mission.
One of the problems we're having is there's many, the per diem is an issue, but that's also a state rate.
Right.
And we don't control it. We've had that problem with a lot of other services where we have a state rate and this is what we get and this is what we charge. Or what we're willing to pay. And what we're also seeing is a lot of organizations that used to do this work in the past are just not doing it anymore for various reasons, including they don't have the workers to be able to provide for the individuals. You could have a location that could have 12 beds, but they also have to have a certain number of individuals available under the state rules. And if they don't have somebody hired to do the work, they can't be there. It's also why you see a lot sometimes of some shelters that are available only in the overnight hours and then they close and then you have to leave and then you can come back.
Creates neighborhood issues.
Because they don't have the availability to man it over a 24 hour.
So where's the
period.
county's role in that? Like there is.
County can't set the state rate. We can only, we're basically a pass-through location. Our mental health department is not a department that has counselors except in one place, the jail. Everywhere else, we are a pass-through in which we work with the third parties. Our Department of Social Services has programs that are in place, and we follow the rules and the regs of the state in implementing the state rates. I mean, we could take your information and I can have our department get back to you. I don't know anything about your particular situation, but I'll have my gentleman take your information before we leave, and we can talk about that and have them reach out to you afterwards. I had a few other questions. We got a few, so.
Well, I was wondering if there's any emphasis to get single family homes start built back up in the inner city again.
Yes, we're actually doing that. We have a plan through our affordable housing program to build them. One of the, I'll ask a question. You ask me, what do you think the average cost of building a single family home is now?
400,000.
It's around that. We could actually probably reduce it to 300 grand through some programs that we have, but it makes it almost impossible to build. No developer is going to build in the city of Buffalo single family home, and except for like Rachel Vincent Way, in which they're charging a very large amount. So building the smaller single family homes that they used to see on parts of the east side and west side just don't pan out. You can't make it financially palatable to build them. So the county has a program. We're going to be building infill housing in the city of Buffalo and some of the other communities in which we put $20 million into the program. 13.5 of it's going to go directly for building single family homes. 6.5 of it's going to go as assistance for multi-unit locations, dwellings like apartments and other types of affordable housing projects. The city's putting a few $1 million in. The problem is housing has become so expensive. It is very, very difficult to build new affordable housing unless it's $300,000 to $400,000 or more. And there's no way for us to adjust that because we can't, we have to buy the wood, the steel, the concrete at the same rates as anyone else. So it's not like we can underbid what the private sector is doing because no one will sell to us. They can sell it at a higher amount in the private sector. Affordable housing is a national problem. There is no part of the country that is unaffected by it. There are some areas that are better. We know how it is here. Ours is considered still a low affordable housing market. And if you look at it, it's not, but it is compared to other parts of the country. It'll cost $800,000 to build the same house as it'll cost here $400,000. That's the problem, is that I don't know what the pure answer is, other than the county is going to be putting $20 million total, 13.5 in the single family homes, 20 million total in affordable housing, taking DHCR, State Department of Housing and Community Renewal dollars, as well as city dollars to build more single family homes in the community, and hopefully create density in areas that don't exist. You and then quickly get out of here.
Okay.
I know you have other candidates.
No, I don't want to get distracted by the question I want to ask you, but I live on the east side of Buffalo, in Roslyn, and I see existing homes that are deteriorating, and they're getting sold for like $80,000, and people are occupying them. So I mean, instead of building new homes, there are a lot of houses that can be reclaimed.
Correct, and there are.
So that I just want to say that, because that 800,000 is out there, and you're building something new, but there's a lot of existing housing. And people who can afford to put the money into repairing them come back into the city.
Correct. And what we want to do is infill housing in areas where there's no housing almost.
So my question to you is I was looking at the county website for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I didn't see a separate department specifically for that.
No, there's the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, which is headed by James Blackwell, which does all that work.
Okay.
It's been in existence for 40 years.
I see a diversity, equity, and inclusion office, but it's embedded in the district attorney's office.
Well, we don't have an office named Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, because we have the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, which does all of that work anyway, including analyzing our hiring data, ensuring that the county contracts are meeting the standards that we have in place. We've been doing DEI before anyone heard of DEI. It's just equal employment, but it also looks at not only the employment of the county, but our contracts and whether we actually are hiring at the rates that are applicable based on the population of Erie County. Erie County is not the city of Buffalo. I had this question recently saying, well, why aren't 30 to 35% of the employees of Erie County people of color? And I go, well, they don't make up 30 to 35% of the employees or the population of Erie County. Plus, we also have civil service guidelines that we have to follow. Approximately 14 to 15% of the population in Erie County are African Americans. About 5% are Latino, and then there's a smaller amount of other groups.
So you may have made an assumption about the direction of my question based on your response, because you started talking about racial groups and that kind of stuff. That wasn't the direction of my question. The direction of my question is that when you talk about inclusion, there are lots of groups that don't necessarily conform to racial stereotypes that are not included. Homelessness is one of them. People with disabilities is another group. So when we talk about inclusion, we talk about more than just those kind of things. And I'm wondering if the existence of a separate department of diversity, equity, and inclusion might bring another perspective to some of the issues that we seem to go.
I disagree, because it's already being done. We have the Office of Public, we have the Department of Public Advocacy, in which in the Department of Public Advocacy, you have the Office of People with Disabilities.
Right.
You have the Office of Equal Employment. You have the Office or the Commission on the Status of Women, and now you have the Office of Consumer Protection, all under the umbrella of what's called the Department of Public Advocacy.
Okay.
So it exists, it just isn't called DEI. So I think that's the important thing, is I look at it this way. I don't care what anything's called. Are we doing the work? And we are doing the work. It's just a broader department. So yeah, there's been some, I think even the city may have done a DEI office lately. They never did any of the stuff that we had done for decades. And they had in their charter that they were supposed to do some of this stuff, and they weren't doing it. We've been doing it for decades. We have it under the big umbrella of the Office or the Department of Public Advocacy, in which these separate offices are under there, and they report to the Commissioner of Public Advocacy, who's a woman by the name of Karen King. But they're all separate. And you are right. made an assumption based on where you're going, and I do apologize. I shouldn't have answered it. But we do have it. It's just not called the Office of DEI because there's the Department of Public Advocacy, the Office of Equal Employment, the Office of People with Disabilities, the Office of Consumer Protection, and the Commission on the Status of Women, all under the one umbrella. And then we have the various departments that also focus on particular issues like homelessness and so forth in the Department of Social Services and the Department of Mental Health. We're trying to, we have what's called the Live Well Erie campaign. Live Well Erie, you may have heard of. We announced it prior, well, it's interesting because we announced it prior to COVID, but that's one of the things we had to push off to the side. You can go to livewellerie.com and find it, or livewellerie.gov. But it's a health and human services plan that focuses from birth, working families, children, working families, and then seniors. And it's try to ensure that everyone leads their best life possible. We had to put that kind of aside because of the issues we're dealing in the last term, but we're moving forward again. And actually earlier this morning on my Twitter page and my Facebook page, I actually posted about Live Well. So one more and then I'll get out of here.
Okay, I'll try to shorten it and make it quick, but is there something in place or would you consider thinking about a lot of us that live in the inner city? The corner stores they're not handicap accessible. They clean out our supermarkets, they clean out our Sam's Club, and they triple the prices where the people who are on fixed income can't even really afford. Half the stuff be expired. They're selling weapons to our children and drugs illegally. So is there something in place to protect our communities and make it better for those of us who want to open up businesses to open them where they're safe and the people can be able to get into them easier, because most of these stores have staff and that they don't even hire outside of their own community.
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're saying. Part of the problem are a lot of these buildings are grandfathered in under because of their age. They are supposed to follow handicap accessible guidelines. Many of them don't. I'm not going to deny that. So the issue is they can be fined, but the fine has to come from the City of Buffalo Inspections Office. We don't have the power to fine them for that. It's the City of Buffalo. We don't have an like a building inspector. We don't have a building inspector department. No, the county doesn't. All the towns and the city does. So it would be up to the city to say you're violating the ADA by not having the ability for an individual who's handicapped to be able to enter your establishment. Some of them are grandfathered in, but most of them, if they've done any retrofits and stuff like that, they're supposed to do it. It's in the city's hand to do it. The county Department of Health has looked at some of these smaller mom and pop bodegas and stuff like that, and we've actually offered to give them coolers to sell fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. And they don't want it because it takes up room for what they feel like they can make more money on, like beer, things like that. So we actually have this program. There's a few that have, like, I think less than 5, but there's a few that have taken the coolers. They have to have it stocked with fresh fruit and fresh vegetables, because we know if you go into most of these places, they do not have fresh food. Everything's boxed, everything's processed, and you're right. It's very expensive. That's why it's very important that once the top shut down, we had to get something opened as soon as possible. Not everybody wants to set foot in that store again. I understand that. I get that. But for others, it was important that the Tops was reopened as quickly as possible because we had to have an availability in that community of a location that sold fresh food.
Maybe more than one.
Yes, but I will say this. I mean, there's only one Wegmans in the city of Buffalo, and there's other areas where it could be successful. Wegmans will not move into an area unless they can sell more than $100,000 of groceries an hour. That's why they won't move into other parts of the city of Buffalo. If you ever gone to Wegmans in the suburbs, you'll see they sell 100,000 or more an hour.
2 customers.
It's amazing. But we've worked, we've tried. Tops is much more understanding, and they are in many more neighborhoods in the city of Buffalo. There's only one Wegmans in Buffalo. There's many more Tops. There's Price Rights, there's Save-A-Lots, Aldi's, but there are areas that are still underserved. And it's something we've looked at. I can't force a retailer
is not the same at all those stores. Save-A-Lot is trash, the quality. All these things. Blackman's got good.
I can't, all I can say is if you see something that seems to violate the health code, you can call our health department.
Yeah, it's not even just that though, but basically like the fact that they're selling illegal products, marijuana and knives to children.
You gotta
in
call
our
the,
community.
you gotta call the police on that.
And nothing, and I heard that, oh, because the government can't get the tax money from the corner stores that selling weed. So they wanna start going in because the government can't get money, but they're not caring about the people, the children in the community. I don't get it.
The
It's
county,
the money. Why?
the county doesn't have a role in that. You'd have to call the Buffalo PD if they're selling weapons or selling illegal items.
City of Buffalo.
I mean, we don't, I mean, the sheriffs, you could call the sheriff's office, but they're probably gonna refer to Buffalo PD.
They don't be rated.
You want to talk
Alright.
about the
They do on
site?
the website. No.
I think I need to go because I believe there's a few other candidates. But I appreciate everyone's time.
All right.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on. Our next candidate is, we can have her super quiet. Our next candidate is Amherst Council Member Robert Gilmore.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come in front of you this evening. My name is Bob Gilmore, and I am running for Amherst Town Board as a council member. That's okay. That's okay. I have been active in the town. I've lived in the town for 44 years. I've been a volunteer in the town for 38 years. And I want to come back to that, especially related to some of the conversations we've had here today. Town of Amherst. Town of Amherst. Now, it's interesting. I know that we have folks in this room from surrounding areas. And I know we have people on Zoom and some other places and that. So I'm going to try to tell you how we work together and those types of things, but let me continue on. So as a volunteer of the town for 38 years, I've been primarily 18 of those 38 years on traffic safety. Okay, many of those as a chairman of that group, and then 20 years in the planning board, and many of those years as a chairman. Now, again, coming back to some things in a moment there with that, why that's important. I'm running because, quite honestly, it's about quality of life for me. I am for Amherst, and I'm for the community. So what does that quality of life mean? Quality of life for me means certainly it's controlling of taxes, expenses, right? Strong public safety, who I heard certainly is talked about here today. All right. Fiscal responsibility, smart growth, farmland protection, architecture or agricultural development, quality services, municipal collaboration, and of course, increasing the jobs. Now, let's talk about for the moment here, quality of services. In the town of Amherst right now, right, we're looking at the opportunities of improving public transportation, all right, because we know that's something that we need to do. In chatting with Todd for a few minutes as I came in here today, he enlightened me in the fact of some of the challenges that folks have with the lack of public transportation in some areas. And it was very enlightening to hear some of these kinds of things, and thinking back on that and how we can start to improve some of that. Now, I hate to admit this, but I was a young cost engineer when we put this rapid transit thing in up and down Main Street. Well, I know there has been talk of trying to do something like that in the town of Amherst. And of course, you know, the funding is different. There's a lot of things that are different. So I'm not certain where that's going, but I'm certainly for increasing public transportation. And that means that is certainly maybe one way of busing and other things, more options out there so that folks that have a disability of some kind, they have some better options in being able to be transported from point A to point B. Todd also brought up something else that was an eye-opener. I know in the city of Buffalo, they're experimenting in some areas with speed bumps. And of course, you know, for a lot of the year, people are on sidewalks, so that's not an issue. But sometimes in the wintertime, it is an issue. And that challenge of trying to get over that, if you will, that speed bump in the roadway is a challenge. All right, I never thought about that. So one of my supporters was with me today, happens to be an engineer. So he was in on a conversation also, and we talked about thinking of ways of placement of those types of things in the event that there is a need for that. And more importantly, is there a better design or better way of, so that those times when someone has to be in the street, all right, that has not become an issue. I mean, ultimately, we'd like to think that during the inclement weather, people do take care and shovel their sidewalks and so forth. Exactly. We know that that's not always the case. So then we have to think about other things in areas, all right, where there is the need to be able to service people. And I'm not sure we know those areas. I'm not sure we know, and I think we need to have more information on that. And when I say we, the people that are making the decisions have to understand the demographics of their community and their neighborhoods, so that where those particular areas of needs are, we need to be able to have those extra services and be able to accommodate for those kinds of conditions. As a chairman of the planning board for a number of years, okay, my function in that is to manage meetings, to certainly move projects along that have been approved by the professionals. But also, again, looking at it from the perspective of where are we with how we're accommodating, all right, with regards to the demographic of that particular project that we're putting in. So that, again, so that everyone, if it's a community center of some kind, how can everyone take advantage of that use? If it's a particular type of housing, what has to be in place so that it minimizes the exposure and maximizes the benefit for the folks? So looking at those kinds of things moving forward, all right, is something that I will certainly focus on, whether I'm elected or not. I hope to be, of course, but whether or not, I hope to still be involved some way, shape, or form with that planning board in digging into those kinds of things. Like I say, from the standpoint of quality of life, we also are always looking at farmland protection and agricultural growth, so that I heard in the last presentation, just the availability of certain, you know, quality of foods, things of that nature. And then again, all right, so if we place these kinds of centers in a particular location, we want to make sure that everyone can take advantage of the use of that. Again, and maybe it's positioning in such a place so that there's the proper kind of public transportation available to that. And or what other means are out there, if there's something where there's outsourcing and things of that nature. And we want to make sure that those things are available to folks too. If there's, maybe there needs to be more opportunities out there so that it's more competitive from the perspective of cost. Certainly, so it's from the perspective of the condition of equipment, so that people don't have to be concerned about, oh my God, here's a means of transportation available to me. I don't know how to get there, or I'm not comfortable with that. All right, all that's a big thing to be able to take a look at that. And I'm not saying that the town of Amherst doesn't have some of those things in place now, but it's like anything else. All right, we're talking about improvements, constant improvements of things to do that, and hearing from the community as to what their needs are. And sometimes we don't hear enough of that. It's not the fault of that. It's the fact we're maybe not asking those kinds of questions. We're digging deep enough into that to really understanding what those needs are. So as you folks that are here today, and certainly those that are listening to this presentation, that's important for us, maybe being a chairman of a planning board, to know what some of those things are. The professionals are bringing those things to our attention, but are they bringing everything to our attention? All right. And what hasn't worked in the past that people think it has? So all very important issues, all things that we want to know about. From the perspective of taxes in the town of Amherst, we know that we're going to be facing double-digit increases coming up in this next tax proposal. with those increases in taxes, we also know that there's going to be some gaps. And with those gaps, there are certain things from a quality of life perspective that maybe not are going to be addressed the way we'd like them to. We are certainly concerned. I look at public safety from the perspective of police, fire, and highway. So we want to make sure that we are properly funded in each of those categories, have the right people trained in those categories. All right. So again, when they're called upon for the services they need, all right, they're fully trained and can react and handle the situations the best they can. From a highway perspective, we are concerned because we had a 100-year storm last year. It took us some time to bail out of that 100-year storm, but not because those folks weren't working. It's because they were assisting police and fire, obviously, for folks that were trapped or other things. I heard a tragic story just a few minutes ago about a person who was unaware of some conditions, thought that their place of work was open, only to find that it was not, and they made the attempt to get to work, all right, the commitment and dedication to get to work, because the public transportation, which was their normal mode of getting there, wasn't available. And unfortunately, okay, they died as a result of it. I mean, those kinds of things, we got to do better at that. We got to be able to figure out ways of dealing with those kinds of things, and maybe just the alertness of finding out where those needs are and what we need to do and how do we need to react to that. And that's a commitment certainly that I will make as if elected to be able to address some of those kinds of things. I am fortunate enough, I have been endorsed by the Amherst Police Club, the Good Government Club, and the Polish Civic Activity Group. All right, so it's a nice demographic of folks and committees that feel that I'm the right candidate moving forward to be able to address some of these needs that are out there. So that's why I'm quite honestly running for the town board. I am a person that I am going to be available. I'm going to call myself total time available. It's not a full-time position, so to say that I'm going to be there full-time might be misleading. The total time in that I am not a person right now. I've been fortunate that I was able to retire in July. So this is my dedication. This is my effort moving forward. This is so that I'm available. So hearing things like that. So at some point, I will come back and talk to Todd again. And we'll have a great conversation with regards to what's happening, what's not, and what we can do to make the situation better for us. So again, for those that are on watching this today, for you that any of them in this room that may be in the town of Amherst, they ask for your vote in November 7th, or early voting starts actually October 28th. I am Bob Gilmore. I want your support. I'll take questions. Yes.
Your competitor, Mr. Gilmore, is Mr. Zuccalla.
Mike Zuccalla.
Are you running for the same seat?
Yes, we are. But I should share with you, sir, that there are 2 openings at the moment. There are 2 openings on the town board, 2 councilmanic seats. There are 4 people running for those. So Mr. Zuccalla and I could both be elected and both work together in the future. I want to point out that I have been endorsed by the Republican conservative parties, but I've always been in a situation where I've worked with everybody. I've been a volunteer for 38 years. I worked with boards with all kinds of affiliation, and I've gotten along with everyone very well. And quite honestly, in 2 different situations, I've been reappointed by a fully Democratic board because of the working relationship we had. Because we look at it from the betterment of the achievement of the town, not party politics.
So my question that I would ask, I asked this question because in the last few years, there's been a cancer, in my opinion, injected into our politics throughout the nation.
I agree.
And unfortunately, your party affiliation is that of the party that has injected the poison. And the poison is that Joseph Biden didn't win the 2020 election. Donald Trump really won, and if the Republican doesn't win the election, it must be cheated. So my question to you directly is, who won the 2020 election?
The people of the people of the country
That's an
made a
easy
decision. The people of the country made the decision, and the president that's in there now was elected by that jury.
I'm looking for, did he win or did he not?
In my mind, he won. Yes. You won't. And I think,
that's an important thing.
you know what, yes, it is.
To carry forward.
Yes, it is. And let me tell you what else is important. As I made a statement a few moments ago, it's important, as I've stated for so long, is that I am not here. It's not about party politics. It's about working together. All right. Mr. Stukal and I, all right, have worked together on a number of things. All right, since he has been council member of the town. He's running for his second term. So he's been on the town board for 4 years. This is my first time running that. But as chairman of the planning board, he at one point was helpful in getting me reappointed. All right. So back to your point, we work together. Again, it's not about what party affiliation you are. It's about serving the people in the constituency of who you've been elected by.
I so much agree with you. Unfortunately, as much as I would love to remember the days when politics was a local affair, that's no longer the case. Political affiliations, even on a local level, have national implications. They do. So that you take the position that you just expressed openly.
Absolutely.
You may be a great person to help save the party you're affiliated with.
Believe it or not, again, I'm there to serve the community that I'm for Amherst. Okay, being for Amherst.
I don't live in Amherst.
I understand that.
Amherst a lot.
I understand, and you know what? Thank you for doing that. I think it's important for people to know. Again, I'll stress the point that I fully agree with you, and that if people are on the right or the left or wherever they are, as opposed to working together. You know, there was a president a number of years ago named Ronald Reagan who was able to reach across the past and work with everybody. And obviously, between his first term and his second term, 49 of the 50 states, he won it. Why did he do that? Because it wasn't, again, about politics. It was about what the people thought and how he represented himself and how he looked at the group to make things happen. And that's back from where I'm coming from again. At this point of my life, I'm not looking to be a council member today, an assembly person next week, and the supervisor. And I'm doing this to stay engaged in my community. Quite honestly, it's not about the few dollars they pay us. It's not that I do it for free. All right. I'm doing it because I want to stay engaged in the community. I want to stay active in a bunch of things. And just today, again, I'll go back to talking with Todd and just some of the things that he opened my mind up to thinking about, and how maybe we can put some effort together to make things better in those areas. And that's the return you get on it. It really is. And that's what I'm looking to do. That's what I'm looking to do. So I appreciate your question. Anybody else? Yes.
Considering the overdose issues with the rise in fentanyl and xylazine and drugs and people using drugs, what is your position on access to Narcan and fentanyl test strips and other things like that that are considered harm reduction in the town then?
I think that we need, obviously the whole drug thing is such an overwhelming issue, if you will. I think that anybody that's first responders or responders of any kind, you need to be trained in those areas and certainly have whatever the equipment and things necessary to be able to react to that. I also think that however these things can be administered or issued to folks that are involved in that kind of environment, okay, it needs to be available to them. I think it's a much bigger issue with regard to, I think that the people that are pushing these things, I think we need to get tougher on laws. All right. In a lot of instances, the consequences aren't there. They're
consistent.
Yes, you are 100% correct. They are not consistent. They're not consistent with so many things here, and they need to be. And that has to be something that has to be improved. You have to make sure that whether you're police, whether you're fire, whomever is the responder, the volunteer fire and so forth, they have all of that equipment available. We have to be able to react to those things so quickly. And let's face it, there are, in today's environment, we know that there are people that maybe started down that path because they had a surgery of some kind and they went from painkillers and they got hooked on those things and it took their life in the wrong direction, right? And you got to figure those kinds of things out too. How's that changing? This whole fentanyl thing, I can't get my arms around it. A lot of people can't. We got to try to figure out why and what it is. Where's this stuff going?
how are we acting to it? All right, you know, the whole border issue is another thing, and I'm not necessarily want to go down that, but it's back again. I think in some instances our laws have to be tougher. When people with those kinds of, when they've been charged with those kinds of crimes, there has to be some real consequence. I know there's been arguments in the past with folks that when it was marijuana and maybe they interpreted that it wasn't that big of a deal and maybe they were overcharged. That's maybe why this whole, but certainly fentanyl and the fact of it, how it's impacting our youth, how it's impacting all kinds of folks, and what's happening out there. We gotta look at that. We gotta get tougher. And I don't know what the answer is to that. All right, but to your point, I think at least with stronger training, with at least having whatever remedial or medical attention that we need to do on it to at least address it as quickly as we can. Certainly, so we're not losing as many lives as we are. But then, of course, it's some of it's educational, some of it's maybe we need to have more centers, if you will, and help people get past some of this stuff. I mean, I don't know what it's like to become addicted to those kinds of things. But again, I'll go back to my statement a moment ago. There are a lot of people that got addicted to things because they wanted for some kind of an operation, the painkillers were gone, and they went to the next step. We got to figure out what that is and how to do better with those kinds of things. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I will be back talking with Todd regardless of the outcome of my situation, because I mean, just that speed bump thing alone, we're going to figure out a better idea for that than some of these other things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Take care.
Running for county executive on a little different.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. My name is Dwayne Whitmer. I'm an accountant and small business owner by trade. I'm originally from Franklinville, New York, which is a small town near Ellicottville, near Holiday Valley. I went to Fredonia State, got a degree in accounting. And then in 2014, I opened my practice, mostly focusing on combating the IRS and making sure people can keep their tax dollars in their pockets. The reason why I decided to run was I see what's going on in this country. I'm a little disappointed. There's this belief that a large central bureaucracy will solve all our problems, and they take our tax dollars and they give it to the Pagulas. They take $500 million from the Senecas and they give it to the NFL for a new stadium. The Seneca territories are one of the most poorest areas in the nation. And yet we took $500 million for them so Terry Pagula can get a better yacht. And they build the stadium in Orchard Park and don't really care about anything else. It's a grandiose monument to government failure. And that's what it's going to become, and that's what it is. I'm disappointed that the Erie County budget of $1.7 billion, driving through parts of Buffalo, you see a lot of benefit not going to those people. There's a lot of jobs getting handed out to people that are related to candidates and helping candidates. There's a lot of people running that are related to other people. The political class has failed the working class. And that's why I decided to run. So when I started running, I needed 1,500 signatures from registered voters in Erie County. And I knocked on doors in Cheektowaga, Hamburg, and Buffalo, mainly because those are population dense areas. And I got yelled at a lot, and not because they didn't like me, because a lot of people are disenfranchised and they've given up in the system. They don't believe the system represents them, and they're correct. Right now, you have a massive class system in this country, which is the political class and the jobs program versus everyone else. And I'm running to educate people on what's going on and allow people to vent their frustrations voting for someone else, to maybe send a message to the politicians that people are upset. I'm going to keep it short because I want to hear from you guys. I know you guys had questions for the last guy. I want to hear what you guys want to talk about and answer the questions you guys have. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Fire away. I'd love to hear what you guys have. Yes.
So are you the only libertarian person in that room?
I am. I'm actually the chair of the Erie County Libertarian Party, and there's not many of us. There's 1,500 libertarians in the county. New York State has done a great job of keeping third parties out. There used to be, in 2018, you had 5 candidates for governor, and not to get down the weeds, but they changed the rules on how you can run for candidates. Now you can have candidates, and they made it so that's why in 2022 for governor, there were only 2 candidates. They kept out the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Independence Party, the Reform Party, the Sam Party. They're essentially making it a political class, one party rule, and keeping everyone out. And no one's really doing anything about it. So we're fighting to keep our people, and we're fighting to keep our principles going. And it's been tough. So yeah, I'm the only one. Yes.
If I'm understanding you right, we want to downsize our government.
Yes.
If we do that, how do you guarantee that we can draw down all of the state and federal funds that we have access to now?
Yeah, the issue we have is our county is propped up by state and federal funds because we've been giving out a ton of money to agencies that don't deserve it. I live in Hamburg, and one of the things going on in Hamburg right now is they're touting that Hamburg's not Erie County, but it's an example. Hamburg's touting that they raised the police budget by $1 million. There's a homeless problem, there's an addiction problem in Hamburg, and we're raising the police budget by $1 million. I think the bigger issue isn't the money we're getting. We have a $1.7 billion budget. The issue is where we're spending that money. A large amount of our budget is going to no-show jobs at places and agencies that don't need the funds. And so I'd like to see a full-blown audit of our books and figure out if we can reallocate spending better as well.
I don't think that answers my question, because it really is about that brings money into our area, like where it's not just relying on our local dollars. So how would you guarantee by downsizing government that we can still have access to those state dollars coming into our area from the state and federal government?
Why would they not send it to us if we do something different?
Because there's regulations that we have to follow and reporting that we have to follow, and the government needs to do that. There needs to be people in place to do that.
There needs to be people in place to do that, but there's other places that we can downsize without needing to worry about regulations.
I haven't looked lately, but within New York State, we give a lot of money to the state, and most of that money goes to New York City. It doesn't go to Buffalo. And within the country, New York State gives a lot of money, but a lot of that money goes to the farmlands and doesn't come back to New York State. The New York State, and Buffalo specifically, is contributing more money than they're getting back. So
that's not my question.
they withdrew some of that federal money, and they kept things locally more closer to home. We would be spending only our own money, and there would be more of it.
That again, that's not the question. It's in the infrastructure. So you're saying we don't need that infrastructure in order to access those dollars back down into our area?
Correct. There are some things we don't need to comply with regulations, yes.
For example.
So right now you have a great example is 50% of our budget is funded of unfunded mandates. It's Erie County's budget, 50% is unfunded mandates. What that means is New York State says, you need to do this, you need to spend on this, you need to have this. And what happens is the county takes that as an opportunity to hire friends. It's a nepotism program. I want to analyze these programs to see, are they beneficial? Are they being spent right? And is there fraud going on? As an accountant, I can tell you there's a lot of fraud going on. One example to look back at the federal funds is Erie County got $150 million in federal funds during COVID. They have a list of how they spent that money. $30 million went to a company that doesn't exist. It's a paper company. So we were given money and no real oversight in how it was spent. And in the foiling we were able to do, we're still working on finding records. They're not giving us records because it's hard to do. But $30 million went to a company that exists only on paper, and they spent $129 per box of masks. Where are those masks? Where did those masks go? Nobody knows. Where were they stored? Nobody knows. What happened to them? Nobody knows. And that's an example of there's a lot of frauds going on. So that is one thing I'd like to analyze with the COVID relief, how it was spent, where it went. It was supposed to go to certain things, and it may. There's this belief that, well, the government did it, so it must have done right, or they did something, so it must have gone okay. But there's no real audit done on where that went. And I tried, and I'm running into a lot of brick walls. Yes.
I'm concerned if you're calling it fraud, but no one knows. Like, how can you call it fraud if no one knows?
I think by definition, it's misappropriation of funds. That's my professional opinion.
So, but you just said no one knows if it's misappropriation.
If I give you money, to be fair, I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying if someone gives you money and asks where that money went and you don't know, by definition, that is fraud.
Right, so you're saying they're saying, I don't know, quote unquote, I don't know.
Yes. And maybe they don't know, but then it was stolen, which is a bigger issue.
So you mentioned, I'm sorry, did you finish your question, Mark? So you mentioned about Hamburg bragging about increasing its police budget.
$1 million.
So what percentage right now is the police budget in Buffalo of the county? I mean, Buffalo, you know what percentage that is?
I do, it's tough to calculate because the sheriff's office and the jails run separate.
Right.
So they're not included, but I would say it's pushing, if I'm remembering correctly, almost 20%.
Okay, so
If
how
someone
would
has a phone, they can look that up and confirm that. I don't have it.
no, I don't need a specific number. I just want to ask you to make a point about how you would reallocate those funds and what percentage, what do you think is the reasonable
One
of
issue,
the funds that should be devoted towards police?
one issue that I have, and it's something she asked to the last candidate, was about addiction. I don't believe addiction is a criminal issue. I think it's a mental health issue. And a lot of times what we have is my stepbrother died of heroin a couple of years ago. And what happened was he got injured, started using pain meds. They cut him off, used his friend's pain meds, got caught with a prescription that wasn't his and went to jail. So then he gets out of jail and what happens? Well, he has a prison record. He's got a record. He was poor. He didn't have a good attorney. He has a prison record. So now he can't get a good job. So what is he doing? He lost his sense of purpose, went back to heroin, ended up overdosing. The system failed him. And you could say people are going to blame him. It's his fault. Again, addiction is a mental health issue. And he didn't get the support he needed. And a lot of times people feel that if we call the police because there's someone, this person's addicted to drugs and doing something wrong, we'll just call the police. They'll take care of it. The training isn't there, and then what happens next isn't there. So as far as what's a reasonable percentage, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that allocating funding to make sure that people understand that jail is for people we're afraid of, not for people we're mad at. That's a more reasonable way to handle these things. I'd like to see more money allocated to addiction support and help. So I don't know an exact percentage. I'd have to analyze. I know the biggest expense in the sheriff's department is salaries because they make a lot of money, and it's jail salaries because they make a lot of money at overtime. And it'd be something we have to analyze. I don't think, bringing it back to Hamburg, we have like 35 cops that make over $120,000 a year.
Wow.
And that doesn't include the pensions, the benefits, and everything else. I think that's absolutely irrelevant and are absolutely unnecessary. And so I'd like to analyze, if the staffing is necessary, if you start to use it as a catch-all for anyone you don't like. Yes.
What are your views on psychiatric prison? Because they're sitting in prison a little longer than regular people that's been sentenced to prison or jail than regulars. Some people that make psychiatric for decades.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know enough about that. As an accountant, I don't have a huge mental health background. So I don't want to give you a wrong answer or make something up. I don't think it's right to. So what you're saying is if there's psychiatric prisons that they're putting people in, and they're like psychiatric hold, is that how that works?
Instead of going to regular prison, you went to psychiatric.
She said basically, if you go to regular, you get an end date and an out date.
Yes.
More often than not, unless you get like.
Where if they give you a cycle, they can do whatever they want.
Exactly. Just keep you there until one day a doctor may say, hey, this person is fit to go back outside.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Where would you go, since you don't know about that area, where would you seek information to fill out your education in that area? Where would you go?
I think that we should rely on people that are doing it every day. I think that.
Where specifically would you go for that kind of information? Where would you try to access that information? To find out more about that system, what would you do?
I would ask people that are part of the system and see what there is. And then I would ask people who came through the system and see how it went. I think that's where I would start. I don't know. I actually learned a lot recently about how there's a lot of issues that come to light that we don't hear about and that we're not prepared for. And I think that is a whole other problem in itself. Like I actually never knew about the psychiatric prisons. I've been in Erie County almost my whole life, and I never knew they existed. And I'm a resident here. So that's a little bit concerning on my end, not from a candidate perspective, but from a person perspective.
And that must be a very tough question. I withdraw.
No, that's a good question. I'm going to answer it because you're right. And I think that, one thing I'll be honest with is I don't have all the answers and I'm not going to pretend to. And I think that's one thing that people believe if you have a government badge, you're elected official, you have all the answers. I think we should be constantly learning. And so if I was to learn more about it, I would find people, she brought it up, maybe I'd ask her more.
I asked you that question because when a person doesn't know something, I'm interested in where they go for their information, how they go about learning something they don't know.
Yeah, I would start doing research because that's, even from a non-candidate perspective, kind of concerning. So psychiatric prisons are essentially used as
State hospitals. They're not called for CPIs.
Yeah.
So this system, if you get charged with a crime,
yes,
and the court finds that you did it, your crime, they think that you did it because you're mentally ill, then instead of sentencing you to a regular prison where you'd have a beginning and an end date, or unless you have life on the end and there may not be an end date, you would instead be sentenced to a psychiatric hospital. And once you are sentenced to that psychiatric hospital, it's literally a 1 to life sentence. Because before your sentence ends,
so essentially
the psychiatric staff of the hospital and the court have to agree that you're well enough to leave. And if that lasts for 20 years, that's what it is. And I'll give you an example of a person who went to a psychiatric hospital for something that had he gone through the regular criminal system, he would have been out in 4 years. He was there for 20.
So this sounds like essentially the government is putting people they don't want to deal with in a place that no one knows, well, not everyone knows about, and there's no one else's problem. That's terrifying.
Well, it's a systemic issue bigger than just what you said. It's all about, and part of it is just discrimination against people with psychiatric disabilities.
Yes, we have a problem with that.
Well, people have a mental health diagnosis that automatically we're dangerous. We're gonna hurt you. You're a risk, and most has to do with your fears, not what we might do, but what you think. So your thoughts and your opinions begin to circumscribe our lives, and then you create laws to make sure you're safe, and your safety may mean all incarceration.
This is gonna be a dumb question, but is there one of those in the area?
Oh yeah, or it's called Buffalo Psychiatric Center.
Who's in? Oh yeah, okay. Who's in charge? Who monitors? Is this?
It is. That's the problem with it. Once you're in there, it is solely up to basically the doctor's opinion on how well they feel you are. There's no other evaluation process.
Our governor just gave $1 billion to increase more beds and more doctors that can commit people to these state institutions.
And the person
short community-based services.
And the person you're running against just described one of the problems in being able to deal with homelessness and mental health issues is a shortage of psychiatric beds. Did anybody miss that?
No, I believe
I didn't miss it, but
so New York State essentially
being part of the problem.
Guys,
not enough psychiatric
I'm not a
beds.
fan of government, but what you just told me is essentially New York State has a prison that they're putting people in indefinitely for essentially maybe fake crimes because we don't know what they did. It's not illegal to be mentally ill.
if you're labeled with mental illness, you're not given the rights of every other American citizen.
Well, it's a huge contradiction. Just the very idea is ridiculous. For example, if you commit a crime, right, the basis of that is that you had the necessary intent to commit.
There's intent,
right?
yes. Well,
Right? Mens rea, as they call it, right?
Yes.
So, but if you're in a psychiatric hospital, the assumption is that you did not have the mens rea necessary to commit that crime. So therefore, you shouldn't be in there for a crime, but you're being treated as if you're there for a crime, but they said you didn't have the mental faculty to commit a crime.
And I'll take it further. So it's an issue. I'll address it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that if you're mentally ill and you don't have the money, you can't afford a good attorney.
Right.
So you can't.
When you're a homeless person in New York City, then you're put into a hospital, and you know what that's like. So you're a little angry about that.
I would be
You express
furious.
yourself.
Yes.
Then you get a crime.
Then you go to the hospital.
So here's, I think.
All lead to the hospital.
I think
that happens here in Erie County because we are a county that promotes forced outpatient treatment.
I think the pressure should be on the Erie County Sheriff to investigate these conditions and start arresting people. That's what I would say. Is I think we should start pushing the sheriff to investigate what's going on there and start arresting people.
Who was previously a board member of the mental health advocates in Western New York. I don't know if he's still there.
All right, I'm really sorry, but we have to move along. We have other candidates waiting, and this has been a great conversation. Interrupt.
Real fast, where can I learn more about this? Is there like does anyone can give me something to start even?
I was about to say, yeah, I was gonna ask for your card anyway.
Right there, yeah, let's.
I'll reach out to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have the other county executive candidate, Ms. Chrissy Casello. She's with the Republican and Conservative parties. And
She's not-
from Civic, so.
Yes.
Are you there?
Oh, I'm saying.
Go ahead, Chrissy.
I'm just curious, does the camera flip where I can see people? If not, that's okay.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't? Okay. Well, I'm just going to assume that you're all very kind, wonderful people, smiling and happy. First of all, thank you for allowing me to do this via Zoom today. Part of the joys of being a mother of three and balancing it all is that today my normal childcare had to have emergency surgery. So I'm doing this from home, so hopefully you won't hear any noise and hopefully we'll be good for the next couple of hours over here. But thank you very much for having me. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the accommodation. My name is Chrissy Casilio. I am a first-time candidate. I am married to my high school sweetheart. I have 3 children. They're ages 7, 5, and 2. I have been working in the communications and public relations industry for 15 years. I have my degree in journalism. For the past 10 years, I have owned my own business, and my marketing firm is hired out by businesses to handle any and all communications. One of my bigger clients is actually a nursing home group throughout New York State. There are facilities all over the place, and I've been working with them all 15 years that I've been in my career. One of the biggest things to know about me is that I am a very proud third-generation Rotarian. I have grown up with this implementation of what Rotary calls service above self and giving back to the community. And that has been my upbringing my entire life. And the beautiful thing about that is that I've been able to meet a lot of people and see a lot of things. One of the things that I have done is I probably served as a board of directors for New Directions, which is an organization that helps youth in New York State. It helps with adoptions, foster programs, and children that were removed from their homes, children that have had legal problems, which was a very eye-opening experience. I also have had the pleasure of working with veterans. I've had the pleasure of, one of my also very rewarding parts of life has been being a career mentor for both high school and college students. I have found that to be incredibly rewarding because you get to see them grow and you get to see how they evolve and how they ending up giving back to the community. So that's been incredibly rewarding. And I also, my faith is a very important part of my life, and my family is a very important part of my life. And I am born and raised here, and I'm running because I think that there is a time for change and time for new leadership in Erie County. I want to apply all of the walks of life, because what I'm seeing as a mother, as a business owner, as a family person, is that there are a lot of problems in Erie County that need to be addressed. We have a major affordability issue. And while I know that the county government does not control the prices of goods, they do not control inflation, I do know that we have the ability to control taxes and find ways to make life more affordable for the residents of Erie County. I know that we are having issues with safety and people are not feeling as safe as they are. Unfortunately, Buffalo ranks one of the highest in the entire country for car thefts right now, among other things. We have to focus on, and this is one of my biggest points of running, is a family first agenda. And what I mean by that is focusing on the services, and it's especially relevant of why it was important that I speak to you all today, is that we have to have a family first agenda that goes back to the basics of government and focuses on the services that helps better
the family environment. And what I mean by that is mental health services, child protective services, early intervention services, in general, investing into ways that we can improve our school and improve our program. I want to invest in ECC and get a lot of trade schools and trade programs going through ECC so that we can get good paying jobs and fill the void of areas where there are holes in our economy. I can tell you right now from my work with the nursing homes, there is an astronomical, almost dangerous shortage of nurses in Western New York and actually throughout the entire state. And by nurses, I mean CNAs, which are certified nursing assistants, LPNs, and RNs. It is to the point where there are entire wings that are closing. And because of that, we have people that are going to hospitals for various reasons, whether they have an illness, a stroke, or anything that requires therapy where they can't go home, but they're unable to go into a nursing facility because they don't have the staffing for there. And then therefore the hospital has limited space and limited availability, and therefore additional cases of people having to go to the hospital or surgeries or emergencies also strain the resources because there isn't help. So it's having a trickle down effect, and that is going to be a major part of my job as county executive, is to find those holes in the economy and try to be supplemental in getting those jobs filled again so that we can have a safer Erie County. With that being said, ultimately the county executive job is to manage the finances and to make sure that everything is running smoothly and most importantly, fairly. And that's something that I plan to implement because I want to be a county executive for everyone. And I want to be in a position where I'm making decisions for the benefit of my kids and your kids so that they don't want to leave here, so they can be safe here, they can be healthy here and prosper in the Erie County that I've had a pleasure of calling home my entire life. So with that, happy to take any questions. I know we've been going over.
Chrissy, Maris?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, froze for a second. I'm guessing you're open for questions?
Yes. Yes, I'd be happy to take questions.
So my question is, do you know what our agency stands for when it comes to nursing homes and psychiatric centers and all that?
Yes, I actually find your agency to be incredibly valuable because of your independent living status. And we actually have been having to rely on your agency and the various partners that you work with for our patients as they've been unable to stay in nursing homes or because they don't have a fit for the nursing home. On a personal level, my husband's aunt is actually been in a facility in Akron that houses people with disabilities, and she's able to thrive there with independent living. She has an apartment. She's unable to work, she's unable to drive, but she's able to thrive, and thanks to people like you and the services that you provide. So they are incredibly important, and I can tell you that ultimately for our nursing homes, we actually want people to go home. That's the goal. We have the options if they can't go home, if it gets to that point where they are truly not independent, but majority of the businesses for the nursing home is rehabilitation so that they can go and do independent living. So yes, I'm familiar with it, and I find it to be truly one of the most important services in Erie County and in the community.
Do you plan to increase funding for CD Pass programs then?
I want to prioritize all of that. I feel that they have not been, your organizations have not given enough resources. There needs to be more staffing. There needs to be more attention paid to that, especially because you happen to touch the areas, correct me if I'm wrong, that are affecting the health and betterment of the rest of the community, because the mental health services are incredibly important. And I think it is the root of the cause of many problems that, trickle on. It affects the drug issues. It affects the homelessness issues. It affects domestic violence. So without having that core be properly funded and prioritized, there's so many other things that are affected by that. And like I said, that goes with my family first agenda, where those types of services that in turn will have the greatest effect of benefiting the family is what's most important to me.
I have a question. I have a disability and I live in Tonawanda. I'm a homeowner in Tonawanda. And you talked about making decisions based on family values.
Yep.
And where your background.
Not family values, but just the family support.
So what about the people that don't have families? What about people with serious mental illness or other disabilities that their families abandoned them and there's no voice for the families? Can you be that voice?
Absolutely. I don't define family per se as, husband, wife, children. By family, I mean your home, your well-being, your core. So whether that family is one person or, we're Italian, in their families, that's not your well-being and your happiness. So no, I don't define families that way at all. And of course you would be. My husband, by the way, is a pharmacist in Tonawanda. And I've learned a lot about some of the issues up there as well. But no, by families, I mean residents of Erie County.
I'm just wondering where you would get, you said based on your background, you would make the decisions, but if you don't have never mind. Like, how do you make decisions on issues that maybe aren't related to you? Because you said you're basing your decisions on your family values.
Oh, no, I'm not making decisions based on my family values. I'm making decisions based on my experiences and what I've learned with talking to the people of Erie County and hearing about the struggles. So it hasn't, when it comes to family, my values, I mean that more in the sense of that I think it's important to give back to the community and help those in need. But as far as my decisions, it's actually addressing the issues that are affecting Erie County residents the most. And like I said, that is affordability being. I'm sorry. Sorry, I can't hear you, but it's affordability. It's the services for mental health, domestic violence. It's all of those core child protective services, all of those core services that affect the betterment of the family. And like I said, not mother, father, kid, but just the home. Those have to be prioritized because otherwise everything else is affected.
So I have a question for you that I asked the last candidate of your party, and I'll ask the same you. And I'll preface it by saying this: there has been a cancer introduced into our national politics in which that is completely the ownership of the Republican Party. And one of them is to say that Joseph Biden was not elected president and that Donald Trump is really the president, and that if Republicans don't win elections, there must be cheating. So my question to you is, who won the 2020 election?
President Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
If you keep that message, you may help save your party and us too. Because they seem to have a problem with that. Thank you very much for speaking directly.
Thank you for asking the question. I think it's important, and I want unity again. And as county executive, the people are what comes first, not the party, but the people. So thank you. But yes, President Joe Biden is the president. Any other questions? I see a question from Amy Lynn. What would you do to make shelters used by Erie County abide by warrants of habitability? I have to be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with that aspect. I can tell you though what I do know what's going on. We have right now a major increase in homelessness issues. And with that, we also have a major problem with the lack of shelters because a lot of shelters have closed. And what has happened is that we had for a long time, and thanks to COVID, we had people that were able to live rent-free because of the COVID policies, and then that went away, and then many of those people became homeless. So what has happened in Erie County is that because we have this dramatic increase in homeless population, we are short on the resources, and we are short on being able to properly service and care for the homeless population. Just recently, within this past week in my hometown of Clarence, there was a problem where a sex offender was placed in a homeless shelter with children. So, Amy, to answer your question, I'm not familiar with that particular subject of warrants of habitability, but I can in our shelters.
What happened to the sex offender?
He was arrested. He was arrested because he was not supposed to be where he was, but things like that are happening. There's still drug issues that are happening. It needs to be addressed. We have to.
But I'm confused. A sex offender was placed in a homeless shelter.
Yes.
And then arrested because the homeless shelter he was placed in had children in it?
Yes.
He didn't put himself in.
So how much sense does that make?
Exactly. It was a clerical error, I believe. I actually spoke to somebody that works in the Erie County department that handles displaced people, and he said we're understaffed and overwhelmed with the cases that are coming in, and this is how things like this happen.
The clerical parts are not confusing to me because we make those all the time. We're perfectly human.
Right.
What baffles me is why a person who needs housing, irrespective of what they've done before they need housing, get placed into a shelter and then they get arrested because they're placed into a shelter. That's what I'm concerned about. Why would they not remove the person from the shelter and put them in a hotel?
I don't know the details. I don't know the details of what exactly happened. I know that Channel 4 News covered it. I truly don't know the details. But all I do know is that, so there could have been, I don't know other reasons why he got arrested. It could have been a drug issue or something else. I can try to find the Channel 4 article, but you could look for that as well. But I don't know the circumstances, but all I do know is that a major mistake happened where we had a sex offender in the same building as children. So no matter whose fault it is, that is just reflective of major issues that need to be addressed. And, like I said, it's going to be a priority. We have to focus on fixing the problem. Are there any other questions or?
I think our next candidate's here, and we really appreciate you doing this today.
Thank you. And we made it through without any kids screaming, so that's good. Thank you all for your time. And I appreciate your consideration for your support on November 7th. And I'm looking forward to change in Erie County. Thank you.
Next, we have candidate for Buffalo City Court Judge, Ms. Tiffany Perry. You have to stand there. You don't have to lean into the mic.
Okay. Good. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, my voice is a little raspy. I'm losing a little bit, but I'm okay. I hope you can hear me okay. My name is Tiffany Perry. I'm running for Buffalo City Court Judge. I am a native of Buffalo, born and raised in Buffalo. Graduated from Bennett High School, Canisius College, UB Law School. I've been practicing for over 20 years. I worked for the city of Buffalo as a state restrictions coordinator for about 5 years. I was a juvenile prosecutor working for Erie County prosecuting juveniles between the ages of 7 and 15 in family court. This was before the raise the age. Things are a little different now, but back when I did it, that's how that was done. And after that, I was a public defender in Buffalo City Court, where I defended those who were charged in Buffalo City Court. I did that for nearly 5 years. And then I was able to get a job with the Honorable Lisa Black-Rock, who is now retired as her law clerk, for about a year. And then after that, I applied and I was given a position of court attorney referee, which is what I have now. I'm a quasi-judicial judge currently in family court, and I handle abuse and neglect cases. And I also deal with custody, visitation, and some family offenses. But I am running for Buffalo City Court judge. I am running unopposed for that position. And I'm excited about going back home to a court that I love when I practiced there. I don't know if anybody has any questions or any of my background you want me to discuss.
I have one question.
Yes.
What do you think was the appropriate thing to do? You heard the last episode about the person being in a homeless shelter.
So I did not hear the full question, but as a judicial candidate, I cannot comment on any type of current events or any type of legislation. Because as a judicial candidate, I'm sitting in on cases where I have to render decisions. And people cannot feel that I'm biased towards one side or the other. So we cannot comment on current situations. I don't know if that sounded like that was a current situation. So I cannot.
I'm not sure when that happened.
I'm not sure, and I didn't get all the details, but I know that I cannot comment on current situations, how government handled this, or how this was done, or this was charged because of my role. And you want to judge who will sit there and be impartial, listen to everyone and not pick sides. You don't want to feel like your judge is coming in already biased.
What seat has been vacated?
I'm sorry?
What seat has been vacated in the city court?
It's not vacated yet. It will be. The current judge did not run for re-election. He is retiring.
Who is
so
that?
I'm running, Judge Kane. So I'm running for his seat.
Unopposed?
Unopposed.
Thank you so much for doing this and all your service to our community. Can you tell me how or like what your I just I'm honestly I mental health in our community. So how's your understanding? Like how what is your perspective? I mean, this has come before, mental health is a huge issue, and we're very concerned about it here in Western Area Development.
It is a huge issue. When I was a public defender, I know I represented those who had mental illnesses. And a lot of times when they were on their meds, they were very clear, precise, and then they would go off their meds and we wouldn't see them. And a lot of times people with mental illnesses, unfortunately, like I said, it's been a while since I've been in Buffalo City Court. I practiced from 2011 to about 2015. But back then, that was when you had cash bail. It's different now because of the bail reform. But back then, a lot of times because they didn't come to court, warrants were put on them and they were put in jail. And they would get on their meds, they would come out and they would go back in. And I feel like our system, criminal system and mental health system is not the way to handle the mental health. Unfortunately, because of the different disabilities that they have or the different mental illnesses that they may have or mental concerns that they may have, sometimes they cross with the criminal system. And I wish there was a better way that legislation can deal with that problem, because a lot of them had warrants for failure to appear in court. A lot of them were doing things that they weren't on their meds, and if they were on their meds, they wouldn't be doing the things that they were being charged with. I know as a public defender, I would talk to my ADAs about that and try to see if we can get them back into counseling, if that's what the client wanted to do. Because as a public defender, you do what your client wants you to do. So I know talking to my client to see if they could be put, they wanted counseling or if they were in counseling, try to link them back up to counseling. And that would be maybe something we would look at as with sentencing. If they pled to something, maybe we can do that as opposed to go to jail. If they were on meds, maybe have adjournments to make sure they were back on meds, or even the right dosage. Because a lot of times, sometimes it's the wrong dosage, or it might be the wrong med, and it takes a minute to get the dosage right for whatever they are going through to help them to stabilize. So we would sometimes have little adjournments to see if we could get my client, when I was representing, stabilized. So then we could try to have a better result for them for court, and also make sure they understood what was going on. So sometimes you have to spend that extra time to make sure they understood what was going on. And a lot of times you have to be at the level where the person is. And sometimes we talk, and I'm sure some of you too in your work life, we have our acronyms, we have the way that we deal with things. But then people who are not versed, we have to remember to put it back down so they can understand what's going on. And we have to take that time. And sometimes we're 1, 2, 3, and we have to remember sometimes we do have to slow down. So I know that is a big thing for me, a criminal system, but that's a legislative issue. When you're sitting on the bench, you have to deal with what's in front of you and what the laws are.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
I wanted to echo what Laura said. Thank you so much for coming to meet with us, even though you're running unopposed, and to learn more about our concerns. You mentioned raise the age and bail reform, and I know you can't comment, like you said, it's moving on the law, but if you could just talk more about like what your concerns are now as a judge of how you would implement that, considering how criticize those about what is your like in terms of actually implementing or moving forward, what are your concerns or how would be your approach to that?
Well, I guess as a judge, you have to follow the law because you're in charge of that. That's your job. So whatever your personal opinion may be about the changes, that's a legislative issue that you have to send to a committee to do that if you had concerns about how it was done. I know with bail reform, I think they've recently changed it again, and only certain offenses qualify for bail. Other ones is just you don't get a bail, you may get released on rough. I think they still do maybe ankle monitor, maybe you're just out with supervision so that they can monitor you. No system is perfect, as we all know that, but I know they've been changing the bail reform, raise the age with everything going on. I know there's been concerns about the youth in the population with what's going on and how to raise the age is being implemented, but again, that's a legislative issue. And that's something that you probably need to really talk to your state legislation.
I was just curious if it affects like how
you have to follow. I mean, if someone comes before me on a charge that you can't put bail on, I can't put the bail. I can't lock the person up. I'm not following the letter of the law. And as we see, when people go rogue and go outside of what their duties are, we get in trouble. Mm-hmm. So I would have to follow what that law says. If that is a charge that requires bail, then we have to go through that. And then the prosecution and the defense would be able to make statements and evidence to try to mitigate the amount of bail I've accepted, most likely. If it's not one that you can't person in jail for bail, then we don't have that discussion. And I know a lot of times when I represent a lot of parents, and I felt really bad because a lot of parents comes to me for their kids and say, hey, they really need to be locked up. So if they get locked up, they'll get their meds. If they get locked up, then that would work. But that wasn't my job. My job was to follow what my client wanted me to do. And substance abuse is also another issue. That it's those issues of mental health. A lot of parents wanted their kids locked up because that was for their protection. They said, at least I know where my child is. If my child's in jail, even if it's for a week, at least I know my child will be safe. My child will get the meds that they need, and then they will be stable. Or if they were using, same thing. At least I know they'll be clean for that time. I know where they are. But that's not the job of the public defender. It's not the job of the judge, unfortunately. And a lot of parents are very mad at me because I'm like, my client doesn't want to go to jail. My client wants to go home and wants me to do A. I have to follow that. And I think, and that's what people don't understand our roles. We're not social workers. We do what we can do, but we have to operate within the law and what our guidelines and what our responsibilities are as well.
So do you refer though to any type of entity for support from the court?
So
like in drug court, we have peers that are in the drug court and help people navigate to supports. Another thing I want to just make sure I mentioned to you is research shows it's not just medications, it's service connection and the treatment that really helps with recovery, not just the meds. So it's access to services. So is there a way to embed that kind of social work aspect where if families aren't getting what they need for support and are concerned about it, we're referring and linking to the social services that are available in our county?
So in criminal court, you say family. Criminal court is the person charged.
Well,
so,
I mean,
right,
in general,
but
we were talking family.
Right. So for that person, but again, so the parents will come, but it's not the parents getting the services. It's that individual. And so that individual, there's a courts program. we would refer them because we want them to get linked. But if that person didn't want to do it, then there is an avenue. It was the courts program, which is still there in Buffalo City Court. So when I was in City Court, we would refer them to that to get whatever services, and they would link them if they needed housing. They would know where to then source them out to. So that was the place where they went to whenever they needed. They would then try to source them out to who they needed to get linked to. But again, if that individual wasn't ready to do that, the family may be ready, but in criminal court, we're dealing with that individual. And what that, and again, their public defender is trying to get their client what they want to resolve their case. So like everyone doesn't go to drug court. Some people we wanted to go, but some people aren't ready to go for drug court. I know, and mental health as well. I know it's not just about the medication, but sometimes the medication will help them to be able to be ready to accept services. They may have services, but if they're not ready to accept them, I can't force them. You know what I mean?
Towards treatment, so that's not what I was asking.
Oh, okay, no, I was just saying, when you mentioned about the meds, I know that's not always, but I know sometimes that was getting the person stabilized so that they could understand kind of what's going on. But the services are there. And when I was a public defender, we referred them to the courts program, and they would do all of your asking, like if they needed housing or if they needed a individual to help them, or if they needed whatever they needed, they would be able then to source them out to whoever they needed. If they needed SNAP benefit, they would be able to get all of that and help them to navigate what they needed. So that is there and it's available, but again, the people had to follow through with respect to that.
So I was just wondering, what do you use for your ethical stance for the neutrality of judges? Because we all come with our biases, and it's very hard to take those out of how we deal with other people.
We do.
So how do you gear yourself for doing that? Because I know just from my own experience from the work that I do, a judge must be very hard because you have to actually be one of the most empathetic person there is, because you have to look at someone and go, I'm getting completely sketchy vibes from this person, but you can't judge them on that. You know, so where you have to be almost completely neutral in it, you know, where it doesn't matter how he's displaying in his features and whatever he's doing, because this is where I always, when I deal with people, I don't know where they're coming from at that exact point. So how do you keep yourself neutral in those situations?
So we do have rules and we have trainings, and situations. I am fortunate, I'm a court attorney referee, so actually I have been sitting on the bench for the last 7 years in family court. It's a different standard, but in family court. And in family court, again, I'm dealing with abuse and neglect cases, trying to see if I can return kids back to their parents. I may have a dad who the SS does not like because maybe he shows up late or he does that. But the law is, I got to return a kid to a parent if they do the things that we need them to do and it can be safe. So that's my job. And we have to learn how to put your biases to the side. Because again, I'm standing before you. I have to follow the law. That is my job. And to make sure everybody is doing their part to follow the law. We all have our biases. We have trainings. And certain things that you have to put that to the side. Because again, my focus is this kid. And no matter what I may think of you, and I just use as an example, I don't know you, but whatever I may think of you, your kid loves you. So my job is to try to make sure that regardless of what I feel, you have what you need to get your kid back. Because at the end of the day, that's what your kid wants, to be back home with you. End of the day, you want to be back with your kid. You don't want your kid. You don't want your kid staying with relatives and calling them mom and dad, right? So in criminal, it would be the same thing. Regardless of what my personal feelings may be, you kind of put that at the door. My job is to work what's in front of me. If the people don't prove their case, it should be dismissed, right? Because that's the letter of the law. And as judges, like I said, we have trainings, and that is our job to focus on the letter of the law and we have to operate within that framework.
Thank you.
So I got a quick question. So you said you sat on the being on the family court judge?
So I'm a court attorney referee, which is a quasi judicial spot. I'm not an elected judge.
Okay.
It was a position I had to apply for, I had to interview for, and I received.
Okay.
And in that position, I make decisions. I'm a consent part. So to my part, then I can make some limits, but I can issue orders and make decisions.
So if if a person with a mental health disability came in front of you and her kid was taken, his or her kid is taken, and it was found that because of his or her mental health, the doctor that y'all have on that comes out and do the evaluation, y'all sends for, I think y'all have one doctor that do all the evaluations for people with disabilities, and they will always rule that that person is not fit, and then the person end up losing custody of their children because of their disability. I know a girl that's been going for the last 15 years, going back to court to see her kids from birth to I guess the oldest kid is about 15 years old. And because of her mental health, because of that doctor says she's unfit, she lost all rights of her kids. How would you feel about that?
So that happens. I also have people with mental illnesses who have their kids. We have those who have their kids. Just have a mental illness doesn't mean you can't take care of your kids.
But this doctor, doctor said that she.
First of all, not my doctor. He's not the court's doctor. He's an independent person who they may have referred the case to. So again, I have several who are mental illnesses who have their kids and are doing great. You're talking about situations where I can't comment. I don't know what the issue is, and I can't comment on any cases. But you may have an issue where there may be a mental illness situation where there's some concern and they referred it out. Those cases, I'm assuming a trial may be set, and everybody has to bring their evidence. I'm assuming whoever the respondent, that's what we call our mom and dad. I'm assuming that they would ask for a trial. Sometimes people surrender their children. I can't really explain exactly what's going on in the case, but I know if a report comes, that's what TPR trials are, termination of parental rights. Those trials are for. They have those reports. If people disagree, you have your day in court. You present your evidence. Respondents counsel, who would be maybe mom or dad, their attorney would present evidence. The ASC, who represents the child, they would present evidence, and the department would present evidence. At that point in time, it's submitted to the judge. People put case law. There are case laws that guide how we're supposed to do. There are statutes that guide what we're supposed to do. So it's not like we can't color outside the lines. We have our guides, and that's how we make our ruling. And if we mess up, you take it to the appellate court, and they overrule us. That's how our system works. So I wouldn't say everybody with mental illness get their kids taken away. Absolutely not. Because I have a bunch of them. And when we know mental health is a concern, we monitor those kids, and sometimes it may go a little slow, depending on, again, every illness is different. Every person is different. That's even diagnosed with whatever illness it is. Everybody's different. Every situation is different. Some people have resources that can help them. Some people every case is different. So I can't, and I've had some that I was concerned with, and we did step by step, and they're doing great. So I can't, it's hard to say that. And a lot of times too, we get emotionally involved. And that's what separates, and people think judges and lawyers, we don't care. It's not that we don't care, but you can't put your emotions involved, because I have to look at what my guidelines are. And as he was saying about biases, I may think with your illness, there's no way you can raise these kids. But again, there's case law. And if you're proving what you need to do, my bias about your mental illness, I'm not saying that, but if that goes on the back burner. And we have to do what's in front of us and what follow the law. So like I said, everybody is different. And when somebody comes before me, I don't judge them about what so-and-so did, what you did 6 years ago. We're here today. What are you doing today to show me that you can be safe and your kids can be safe? Same thing when I go to criminal court. Okay, what are we doing today? Because everybody has history. I mean, we all have histories. We all did things when we were young. We all did things, beforehand. So we have to look at, again, we have guidelines. We just don't go in there. I feel that everybody with red on is gonna end up in jail. Doesn't work like that. We have our guidelines and we have to follow that. That's what makes us the judges, and to be effective is to follow the law and what's in front of us. So that situation, like I said, I'm assuming they would have a trial.
Okay, my question is how many doctors do y'all have to refer a person who has a mental health to get evaluated by y'all doctors? How many doctors is y'all can go to or send to?
So that, because I don't refer that, that's in the judicial part.
I'm talking about the family.
Right, no, I'm saying that's in the judicial part.
Okay.
You refer them to. I want to say I know a couple of them that they had, that they were referring to, but a lot of times some of the defense counsel may find another person. Everybody agrees to them. But people have to agree to that doctor. Or the judge will do it over the person's objection. A lot of times they agree, we want this person to do it. And I know one person retired who was doing them. I want to say it might be 2 or 3, but again, I don't do that part.
That's a question for the next. Okay.
So maybe they.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. I hope I answered everyone's question. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Our next candidate is on Zoom. It's Richard Wilkinson, who's running for the 5th Legislature District. Richard, are you there?
No.
Looks like he's there. He's there twice.
Is there twice?
But doesn't have a mic. I'm not showing a mic anyway.
Richard, are you on mute?
There's no mic.
If he is, he can't.
Yeah, there's no mic. You can see it from here.
This is Richard Wilkinson.
Oh, he's connecting. He said he's connecting.
Yep, you see it.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Is this better?
Oh, we have you. Welcome and
Thank you.
You have the floor.
yes, if you want to read your platform, and then you can take questions once you do that.
Okay, great. My name is Rich Wilkinson. I am for 8 years with my wife. My wife and I own a restaurant in her hometown. I'm running for politics. I myself am disabled. I got disabled about 3 years ago. Unfortunately, I had the COVID shot and lost the use of both of my legs. So I have about 90% of my leg usage gone. So the reason I did this is because I still, even though I can't do all the things I used to do, I still want to use my business background and use my family to help me and still make an impact on the community and do things that are better and to help improve things. And quite honestly, with today's political environment, I think it's very important that someone who can get along with both sides and makes decisions that aren't partisan and wants the best idea in the room and not be one-sided is very important. I have a very simple platform. It's being brilliant at the basics. I think that until you have the basics done right, I don't really think you need to focus on much else. And in my world, the basics are fiscal responsibility, safety, education. I don't think we're focusing enough on our education and our skilled trades, things like that. And then access, obviously, for the disabled and for our senior citizens and our veterans. I think we can do, instead of some of these projects in these that are being proposed, I think there's much better use for the money to take care of our own people and make life more accessible and provide opportunities for people. I didn't hear the whole what else you'd like me to say, but I'm definitely open for questions if anyone has questions.
You froze. What's in the 5th district? What area is that?
Amherst, Williamsville, and South Cheektowaga.
So I have the same question for you that I asked all the other candidates, Mr. Wilkinson, who are of your party. And I'll preface what I ask you by this statement. There's been a cancer inserted into our national politics, and it seems to be at all levels. And it begins with the idea that when Republicans don't win elections, then there must be a cheat. Something's wrong. And I guess the best way to approach this for me is simply to ask a direct question. Who won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Very simple. I recognize your question and the importance of your question. I'm not a MAGA or Trump Republican. I'm nature, and I think that we overthink things sometimes, not to get into depth to your question. But at the end of the day, the election was won by Joe Biden. And I said that the moment the count came out. Sure, are there going to be questions? I don't think the Republicans were the first people to ever question an election, but at the end of the day, you have to be civil about it and do recounts if that's necessary. And whether it's my race or anybody else's, the winner wins, and that's the end of it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I actually live in your district, and I work in University District, so I'm like right on the southern border of Cheektowaga area, and we've had support from the Erie County Legislature for our renewal center. It's a hospital crisis diversion program, and I'm just wondering like what we could do to enhance access to services for addiction recovery and mental health services in actually placing them in the district and having more support for that within your district. So what would you do, or what's your feeling on supporting these access to these services through the county in your district?
I think that's a great question. And if I'm elected, if and when I'm elected, I think the county and the town have to work hand in hand. And to where I started the legislature, they want to spend $1.5 billion to expand the metro. Okay, that's a lot of money, and then you look at covering the Kensington and other things that they're trying to do. I don't think when I said be brilliant at the basics, it's almost like a football analogy, not to be that way, but I mean, until you block and tackle correctly, there's no reason to throw a Hail Mary, because you're not doing the basics right. And to me, the basics are taking care of our own people. So whether it's mental health, disabled senior citizens, I want to make sure that I get my fair share and more from the county level to go to our local community that I'm representing. I also think what is desperately missing is communication with the community. And I think you have to talk to all your community members and have roundtables, to your point, and to find out what the necessities are and where the needs are, and then not only prioritize them, but see what you can do to get it to make those things a reality. But I would definitely, I think we really need to allocate our resources to bring this in for a landing. We need to reallocate resources to focus on our people and the people that we have that are in need before we start worrying about huge projects. If that answers your question.
We'd like to thank you very much for participating with us today, and we have our next candidate ready.
Thank you for having me.
Our next candidate is Deborah Siebert.
Hello, I'm Deb Sieber, and I thank all of you for inviting me here today. It's an honor to be here. I am not a politician. I'm new to this, and I got into this because the person that assumes they will have this seat, which is the 10th district seat of the Erie County Legislature, the person who assumes they already have this seat scares the living daylights out of me. She is the daughter-in-law of the head of the Conservative Party. They are ultra right-wing. They are totally focused on tax cuts. And I think a lot of the programs that we all feel are important and that benefit people with disabilities and everybody, that benefit all citizens in this county, a lot of those programs will be cut. And, you know, my race is a long shot, but I think it's important. It really, Lindsay Lurigo scares me, and that's why I'm running. I believe in quality of life. I believe in helping people. A little bit about myself. I am at the moment, I grew up in East Aurora. I'm back there. I am semi-retired and I have 2 part-time jobs, one of which is substitute teaching at East Aurora High School, which is my alma mater. The other is working in a program, a joint program with the towns of Aurora and Elma and Erie County with senior services, senior transportation. In fact, I was late getting here today because I just finished driving the senior van and taking elderly people to the doctor, to the senior center for lunch and socialization, things like that. I think it's a tremendous program. The people that use it are so grateful for it. And in the time I have been doing this, one out of the 5 days of the week that this vehicle ran has been cut. So it's limited. We have to tell a lot of people who want rides that, I'm sorry, we can't accommodate you. I think things like this are tax dollars very well spent. And I'm afraid that my opponent would not agree with that. I think things like libraries, green spaces, parks, those are things that enrich our lives. And that's what government is about. I mean, government is about taking care of its citizens and helping them and enriching their lives. I believe in that. To me, that's good government. And a public servant serves the public. It's as simple as that. Now, I think that's the point of government, is to help people and provide services. And I don't see that coming from my opponent. So that's why I'm running. I'm new to this, and should I get in, I will do my best to really try to make a difference and make things run more smoothly for people like all of us. Questions?
We used to have a program with one of the food pantries out your way.
Yes.
What do you think? There seems to be a lot of isolation and a lot of people suffering from mental health issues in the rural part of our county. Any ideas how we can address that, or any resources in your area that should be there?
Well, I think that your observation is pretty spot on. I think that that is true, and that a problem with one of my neighbors up the street. Founded a group called Rock Rural Outreach Center, and I know when he was starting to put it together, he had Frank Cerny.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's been getting around. He's in a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, he had a lot of trouble. Getting the county on board. I think he did manage to get some help, but
Is that Olean Road?
yes, it is.
Okay.
But they have a lot of private support. And I think that, that's wonderful. But I think the government needs to play a part too. They did just build a beautiful new facility, and they do a lot of good. They do, they reach out to the southern tier. There's a lot of poverty there. And when I was talking with him several years back about this, he was commenting to me about, and I had to be on Medicaid at one point. I was a single mother of a young child and things were really tough. And we were talking about that. I had the ugly experience of going into the RAF building and applying for Medicaid and food stamps. And let me tell you, it was a very demoralizing experience. And we were speaking about that, and he said, the thing that's amazing is, Erie County is big geographically. And if you want to apply for help, you gotta go to downtown Buffalo. I mean, if you are a single mother with little kids living, say, in Sardinia or Concord, how are you gonna get to the Radford? I mean, I think that there is a real obtuseness involved here. And, being a woman, I think there needs to be more help for women too, because being a single mother with a young child, I can tell you, is not an easy feat. And when you don't have any money, it's really bad. So I would like to see the county, clean up the RAF building and do a better job there, because I think that can be done, and it needs to be done.
Satellite offices.
Excellent idea. Excellent idea. Yes.
No, what's your idea?
What?
It's your idea. Yeah, go to the DMV, why not?
Yeah.
That's right.
Excellent point. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
You're full of great ideas. That's right.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir.
The person who currently holds that office, you said they're a conservative, they're a Republican also?
This is an interesting thing. The person who currently holds that office is not running. The incumbent was an appointee who used to be a member of I believe a member of the Elma Town Board.
Okay.
That seat was vacated last November when the holder of that seat, who'd been in for many, many years, Joe Larigo, decided he wanted to be a judge. And he was elected to the New York State Supreme Court. So Jim Malashevsky in Elma was appointed to fill that vacancy. In June, there was a particularly acrimonious primary between Malashevsky, the incumbent, and the previous incumbent, Joe Larigo's wife.
Right.
The Larigo family wanted to put Joe's young wife in that seat. So in the primary, as I understand it, Malashevsky was the Republican. Lindsay Larigo was a conservative. Her father-in-law is the head of the Conservative Party. But then she got on the Republican line. She either flipped party affiliation or something. She got on the outspend Malashevsky like 10-1. I mean, they were sending big.
So she is running for the office now.
She is, yes. So there is no incumbent running.
Okay.
It's her, and she's, everybody assumes she's gonna win this, but I just couldn't let that go unchecked. I could not hand her that seat on a silver platter. So you're running. So I'm running. That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I hope you win.
Well, thank you all very, very much. It was a real honor to be there and to meet all of you. Thank you.
I think we've got two more candidates. I don't know if they're in queue or not.
There's one more.
Oh, there's one more, so nobody go anywhere.
Hey, one more.
They must be good nerds.
Where do you want to go?
So our next candidate is Mary Carney, who's running for family court judge.
Before Judge Carney begins, I want to remind people both in here and on Zoom that as a judge, there are certain questions she is not going to be able to answer. So I'd like everybody to remember that case-specific activity is a no-no. I appreciate your time and attention.
Can I, put my stuff up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I brought some cards.
Step up here in front of the camera and
Yeah.
microphone so the people on Zoom can see you.
I'm happy to. I brought some stuff for the folks in the room. So can everybody see me on Zoom?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
They can now. Yep.
Hey, everybody, I'm Mary Carney. I am running for re-election to the Erie County Family Court Bench. I ran in a contested election in 2013 and won. And so I've been presiding there for 10 years. This will be my second term in Erie County Family Court. A little bit about me is that prior to running for election in 2013, I was an attorney practicing in Erie County Family Court, representing children, parents, grandparents in the type of cases that I handle now. So custody visitation, paternity matters. I did some child welfare as an attorney, but I don't. Now I spend my days in Erie County Family Court presiding chiefly over custody and visitation matters between parents, grandparent access as well as paternity and a lot of domestic violence cases. So you should know that family court is my home. It is, with the exception of my husband, the love of my life. I love what I do. I try to every day create a culture of kindness and humility in the courtroom to help families. We're there to help people with the troubles. Nobody wants to be in family court, right? It's not a happy place to go to. You say, I think I'm going to go to family court today. And so with that, I'm very passionate about trying to help our litigants, make the process easier for our litigants. I chair some special committees behind the scenes in Erie County Family Court. One that relates to supporting our LGBTQ plus youth and families to link them with resources. We call it our SOGI committee, which stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression. I co-chair that Sharon Lavallo. I also co-DNR committee, which stands for Disproportionate Minority Representation, which is a long way of saying that the children in our child welfare system are predominantly and disproportionately more Black and brown children. That relates to the proportion of our population. So for example, in Erie County, 14% of the population roughly is Black or Latinx, and 50% of the children in foster care are Black or brown. That is wildly disproportionate. And we're trying to search for answers as to why and try to address those issues with the community. Before COVID, we partnered with Voice Buffalo, and we're doing some peace circles and doing some great work to address the harm. We're not unaware that family court has harmed families, and that was going great until COVID. And so we had to switch to a digital platform. We had a few peace circles digitally, and now we're trying to sort of regroup and figure out how can we achieve equity, right? I want to leave a legacy of equity. I think everybody does. The final committee that I work on, which is a fun fact, for those of you that don't know, Erie County is a sanctuary city, so we have approximately 30 languages spoken in Erie County Family Court on any given day. So I chair a committee called the Muslim and Immigrant Refugee Community Collaborative. It's a collaborative of different community leaders that deals with access to justice. It's super important that if somebody comes to this country, they are not speaking the language and they wind up in family court, that we have, for example, I just this week had a Somali interpreter and an Amharic interpreter in the courtroom to handle a very complex custody and domestic violence case. So access to justice is incredibly important. And so we're always working on creating resources, making sure that people understand
if they wind up in family court, if you can imagine how challenging that would be, just as you are, but then if you don't speak the language. So I'm incredibly passionate about those committees that I chair. I am happy to answer any questions for you if you have any. Yes, hi.
Hi, I just have a couple of issues that I'm passionate about, so I'm just curious. One, if you have followed the Schuyler Center for Advocacy and Analysis, their policy stuff on research around youth and foster care and the disproportionality there and recommendations. They have a whole paper that I think the Annie Casey Foundation
Yes,
funded.
we're familiar with the Annie Casey Foundation and those recommendations. And we do have a court improvement project. Court improvement, I think she's called a project liaison. She's a statewide liaison that is incredibly familiar with that. So she's kind of our guide to how do we handle the next steps, right? And she facilitates our meetings to try to implement those recommendations.
And I'm curious, what is being done or could be done around youth that are entering foster care that have disabilities? There's a disproportionate majority of youth with mental health. Obviously, everybody that goes into foster care gets a mental health counseling due to trauma, but then there's also learning disabilities. They're disproportionate as well. So, and then just in general, people with disabilities entering foster care. Is there any special attention to that? Any,
Yeah, so it's not what I handle in my courtroom, so I don't think I can really speak to that, but I would hope that between the caseworkers, the attorney for the children, when they become aware of a disability, whether it be a learning disability or some type of a mental health issue for a child that's entering foster care, that it's addressed.
So does your committee on disproportionality, like, do they talk about that issue about disability and the intersectionality there?
We talk about the intersectionality quite a bit, but it's in the committee work for example, for the DMR committee and trying to achieve like racial equity. It actually isn't as big of a topic as it probably should be. Yeah, but I can definitely bring that back to them that it should be.
Yeah, that would be great. It's not talked about enough.
Yeah, as a judge that doesn't, I'm passionate about that process, but I don't handle the child welfare cases. So unfortunately, I feel like I can't give you a good answer on those things.
But I appreciate bringing it back.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you. But I will take that back because I do think it's important for inclusion to address it. Thank you for your question.
How many, I have a question, how many doctors y'all have? I just asked the other judge that, how many doctors y'all have when a mother comes up in your court and that they say that her mental health keeping her, she's not fit because of her mental health. How many doctors y'all have that y'all can refer, or is it one doctor, or do y'all have several doctors that these people, these mothers go to that have to be
Evaluated?
Diagnosed, yeah.
Assess?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I can speak, so in my courtroom, it wouldn't be that we would be like taking a child away from a parent. We might be creating a parenting plan that's in the best interest of the children. So we would refer, if the person already did not come to court with a mental health diagnosis, for example, we might be referring for a mental health assessment to determine what that diagnosis would be. The court contracts with Spectrum Human Services for a free evaluation on something like that. And but I don't know in the child welfare arena. So for example, if the Erie County Department of Social Services brings a petition saying this person is unsafe to care for their children because of her mental health. I don't know. I can't answer again for you, like who they're referring to for us for an evaluation. I would only know that from the custody and visitation that I handle.
Okay, I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
So say like, I know a lot of people, like, say like it was a domestic violence in the home. And a mother called the police because of the boyfriend being abusive and wants to get the boyfriend out of the home. Because of this prosecutor wants this person so bad that he is willing to bring, if that person, by her calling on the guy, but the DA wants this person so bad.
This
that
person,
they
the
would-
abuser?
Yes, the abuser.
Okay.
But she called because she felt feared for her and her child. So say like she called him just to get out. He didn't do anything, but he threatened her. So of course, she calls the police and gets him out of the home. Then he ended up getting let go. And the prosecutor want her to go and testify to get him back in jail or to keep him. Because she don't want to go testify on him. Why it is they bringing up charges on her in family court because she won't or call CPS and get a case going to family court because she don't want to testify against him. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I do, I think I do. I'm not certain what I understand the question to be. But let me see if I can sort it out in my head, okay? In a situation like that, if this hypothetical person is in an abusive relationship and she is unwilling to prosecute criminally the abuser, the Child Protective Services might say if there are children in the home, hey, having that domestic violence in the presence of the children is so unsafe for them that if you don't pursue an order of protection to keep that abuser out of the home, we are going to file a petition against you and allege that this is the unsafe condition. So they're kind of forcing her hand to pursue getting an order of protection, whether it's a civil order of protection, which you would get in Erie County Family Court, for example, or a criminal one, which would be like the Buffalo City Court or Cheektowaga Town Court, some other town court. So I think that's what you're saying is like, why is the department saying, if you don't do this, we're gonna file a petition? And my answer would be because they perceive it to be so unsafe for the children and the abusive atmosphere.
So let me tell you the scenario. So my daughter just got picked up because she called the police because the guy was threatening her. Came over, knocked on her door and threatened. She called the police. She didn't let him in. She called the police and said, hey, I don't want to deal with this guy. He's outside my door. Can somebody call? She called 3 times. So now he's a parole violator. So he was picked up. He was told he went to jail on parole violator. Now he's getting ready to get out of jail. So now the DA called her house and asked her if she's gonna press charges. He haven't been in contact with her. It's been like 8 months. Now she said, I don't want nothing to do with him. I'm not coming to court, blah, blah, blah. Now, Child Protective Service came to the house trying to do a case on her because the DA called them and said, because she didn't want to go down there and prosecute this guy. He didn't, he threatened her, came to the house. He was removed, went to jail. He was violated. But I guess they want to keep him in jail for whatever reason, or he had other things that's going on. So now assuming they have a weak case, now they subpoenaed her to court. She didn't go to court. Now they came to get her from her home, just so when she thought she was going to court, they was telling her that they want her to go and testify against him. He threatened her, but any harm wasn't done. But they just trying to keep him because he had other charges also. So they trying to, I guess, build a case up. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Why bring CPS in there when it stems from a criminal case?
Yeah, I can't speak to a specific case. I can just tell you that I know that the Department of Social Services would become involved to the point of filing a petition against a parent if the atmosphere in the house is unsafe for the child.
Didn't they did that 8 months ago instead of now?
Yeah, I can't speak to that because it's about a specific case. Your instincts sound on point. But, you know, I'm not really permitted to answer that question. Happy to answer general questions if you have any about the process. Was that a hand raise? No, that was a get out. That was a thumbs out. You've had a long day and I've spoken to a lot of candidates, probably a lot of hot air in here, but.
We were talking earlier and I wanted the people in the room and on the Zoom to hear this. You've been a judge now for 10 years.
Yes.
Right. What is the thing that has most surprised you 10 years of being a family court?
You're right. So Todd asked me that earlier and I told him that I love it so much. I really loved being a lawyer and representing my client. So you were my client, I'm with for you. This is it. Your problem is my problem. We're gonna go and fix it. Being a judge, I didn't really have a proper understanding of how many lives you could influence from that seat in a day, right? And so became very aware. You think, oh, I'm gonna have like power and right, it'll be powerful. That's very humbling. I just talked to a group of high school students today and they're like, isn't it cool? Like you could send somebody to jail. And I was like, yeah, it's super humbling that you could really impact in a good way or a bad way someone's day, right? So I try to be mindful of that. We were talking about how much kindness matters. And when I've been on the receiving end, you know, of callousness maybe, or people that don't really understand you feel misunderstood, how frustrating that is. So, you know, I'm spiraling, but I do very much love it. And I really mean that when I say a lot of politics is weird, right? They always want you to, what are you going to do next? You know, what job do you want next? I love family court. It's not sexy. It's not the place that a lot of judges want to be, but it's definitely my home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank all the candidates that came out today to answer our questions, and we will be having another session in Niagara County tomorrow and one in Genesee County next Tuesday. So they will also be on Zoom and our YouTube channel. So, thank you to everyone.
Thank you all for coming today. And thank everybody on Zoom who stayed with us. We recorded it.
Yeah.